Welcome everyone to episode 7 of The Goods. I know this is probably like really episode like 12 or 13, but we're making do with the schedule I have right now. I was just explaining this problem to my friend Justin here, where I've shot all the other episodes in like super high definition resolution, but also like 120 frames per second, which is totally unnecessary for like a 2-hour long interview. So these ones I actually have an appropriate FPS rating, everything exports very quickly, and we're all good to go. But yeah, so episode 7 is what we're going on to the working title. I'm here with a really amazing guest who I've been friends with now for 15 years.
Man.
Can you believe that? Or 16 years, yeah, a long time, which is crazy because like, as we get older, I feel like it really hits when you think about stuff like that. Because when we were younger, it's like if you were into music, that, like, I remember being like getting into the postal service in like 2005, 2006, and being oh man, this is like old music, and it like came out 3 years before that, you know what
Totally.
I mean? But now thinking about it, it's like, damn, that's a 17-year-old album. So
I love that album.
Yeah. Amazing guest here that I've been friends with for a long time. Yo-Yo community legend, top 3. In the artistic performance division, top 5 in the 1A division, right? Did you get 4th one year, right?
Yeah.
Okay, this is all off top. I haven't done any research because Justin and I just had this done a few days ago. So I'll cut the amazing introduction short before I embarrass myself. Welcome to the pod, Justin Weber.
Thank you.
Amazing, like I said, yo-yo legend who's been yo-yoing for, I don't even know how, that is one thing I don't know off tip. How long have you been yo-yoing for?
I think it's 22 years now.
22 years. Jeez.
Yeah.
And so you started when you were how old?
I was 11.
11?
So it's 1998.
That's insane. That's like peak, peak boom time.
Yeah. It was around Christmas too. Yeah. I remember getting a fireball for Christmas. So
you were a Team Omega early on. Yeah, it's so crazy how long everyone's been yo-yoing for now. Because like we're all still relatively young in the grand scheme of life, but then it's to be doing something for longer than half your life when you're this young is kind of insane. So
yeah, I always have to tell new people like I've been doing it for 20 years, but it doesn't take that long to get good. Yeah. It's just like 1 or 2 years you'll be going. And
it's also ironic in yo-yoing where like you've continued to progress and you learn new tricks, or like you expand your portfolio and vocabulary of skills with other skill toys, or you like expand your portfolio or your performance portfolio. You know what I mean? You're doing more things with the skill toy other than just like yo-yoing in your room alone. Yeah. But it's so crazy how so many people have been yo-yoing for so long and then they just kind of reach like a peak, even though it's not like a physically demanding thing where it's like, oh, you got to keep pushing more weight to like rip more muscle to get stronger. It's like you can get good at yo-yo kind of technically forever. So
totally, yeah.
It's
There's
so random.
Always more to learn. I think one time not a few years ago, probably like a lot more years ago, but Taka was laughing at me because I couldn't do 2A. And it's just like, I guess, the Japanese staple to be able to do every single style. So I was just like, oh yeah, I guess that is strange that I can't do 2A. So that like kind of motivated me.
What year was that? Taka was giving you this line.
I think it was probably like, I don't know, 5 to 8 years ago or something.
One time Taka came to Phoenix and he was visiting Yo-Yo Factory.
Love you, Taka.
Yeah, we love you, Taka. He came to Phoenix. He stayed in this like super nice hotel room, and Miguel and John Huber and I went to pick him up. Our artist John Huber and from Yo-Yo Factory, and we get to his hotel and there's this like crazy big like ceramic dish thing that was literally like the size of my chest at the time. Like right before I moved to Phoenix, I was like 5'3" or 5'4", whatever. I was a short guy. And like I just picked up this like huge plate and Taka freaked out. He's like, "You're going to drop? No, no, no!" Like he was so worried. I was like, "It's fine, it's fine." It was hilarious. But
he keeps us in order, you know.
Yeah, and he buys all the Oreos. You never noticed that before?
No,
Oreos that Taka.
No, I didn't know.
Every time he comes to America, he buys like all the different Oreo variations he can find.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I do remember that Buko once bought me a Kit Kat bar at Worlds because it means like good luck, because like in Japanese like katsu, like kitakatsu, katsu means to win, and so it's like a symbol of good luck. So it's like, thanks Buko.
05?
Like something like that. 07,
which is ironic because that was
08 maybe. I think it was after that. Okay. She was probably like sharing the love. I've won. Now I need to share it with somebody else.
Passing it on to you. Yeah, that's crazy to have been going to Worlds for that long too. But let's start back from the beginning of your yo-yo story, I guess, or like early Justin story, because you and I are from not the same place relatively, but
very close.
Yeah, we come from a small state in Delaware where Justin and I probably lived like 20 minutes apart, but like, I don't know. It's just like Delaware is like Philadelphia or other places where like some parts of it are really nice and other parts are just like, oh, this is like okay.
Yeah, I know.
This is like Section 8 housing, and then you lived in like a nicer part and like had the whole family vibe. But we went to Mitchell's together and like started yo-yoing that way. But when did you start yo-yoing? And you said you were 11?
Yeah, so it was around Christmas. I remember that. It was, just when everybody was into it in the fad.
Yeah, that's when a lot of people got into it. That used to be the staple in like 2005, 2006. It's like, oh, you got into it during the fad. Okay. And now I guess it's kind of like that too with people that got into yo-yoing in 2010 or 2011 when there was like a big spike in the community. And now people who are like getting back into it 8 or 9 years later, it's like kind of rich. I've never noticed that cycle before, but I was looking at the Google Trend Analytics for yo-yo today. And it's
really?
Like,
wow.
There's a really big spike in 2010, 2011.
Oh, I didn't,
After like Jensen won and all the videos started going viral and getting like 1 million views and stuff like that, it started to do really well. So
that makes sense. Yeah.
What were you into before yo-yoing? Because you, I feel like, come from a pretty like artistic family and creatively driven family, I guess you could say, or?
Yeah, we had a lot of time on our hands, I feel like, because we were homeschooled and like...
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
I was introverted and I was just like in my own world. I was just able to like draw and do whatever, play in the woods and like...
It's good when you're, because it's not like I know there's a lot of yo-yo players who are homeschooled that like aren't as well adjusted or balanced, or like, it's kind of ironic you being homeschooled and being introverted and now your job is to like be extroverted in a way where you're performing for people and not just like in a small way. It's in like the most grandiose way possible that you can with like an inanimate object. So
thanks.
No, it's awesome. It's kind of a crazy comparison. That. You know what I mean?
I think it helped. Like yo-yoing really helped me. Like relate to other people and like meet all kinds of new people from around the world and like so that I think really like helped to balance out the like homeschool world for sure.
Was there anything in particular about yo-yoing that you thought was interesting when you first picked it up, or it was purely just like the fad portion of it? And then, because you didn't go to school, so it's not like, you saw other people playing with it on the playground or whatever, and you're like, I want to do that. It was just like, I guess you saw it on TV or whatever. Or like,
So there was an earlier story, and my parents were renting to like single people in the church, and my parents knew that these individuals were trying to like get their careers on their feet or their educations or whatever. And so there was a Filipino woman and her name was Hopi, and she had a Duncan Imperial, like hot pink color. I still remember it. And she let me play with the yo-yo when I was like 7 or 8. And I was doing around the world incorrectly. Like it was spinning the wrong way.
Yeah.
And I was just flinging it around. And so she was just like, good job, Justin. Good. And I was like, coming from a family that was moralistic and like Christian, like, to be able to do something fun that wasn't right or wrong was, I think, very liberating.
Yeah, that's
without me even realizing it. Yeah. And so then,
I guess, like, I don't come from that world, but I guess, like you said, that's not attached to the church in any way. I could imagine it's like where any kind of positive message kind of has to correlate back to the church, or like it kind of gets not sickening after a while, but it's like really hammered home when you're already like a very loyal and like righteous dude and trying to do everything the best you can anyway. So it's like, you know what I mean? Adding on top of that is like, would be kind of crazy. So it is awesome to like, it's not like you separate the two, but because I was going to bring that up later, how like when I first got into yo-yoing, I wasn't like around any Christian people, and then having so many friends in yo-yoing, you kind of undoubtedly come into contact with Christian people. You come into contact with a lot of people of different religions, but like, I mean, white people in general grow up around Christianity, but I guess like I had just shied away from it for a long time and was like adversely affected by it or didn't want anything to do with any religion. And then getting involved with yo-yoing, it was like, wow, there's like a lot of cool people who are actually religious, and like it's weird for me to be so like adamantly against like vibing with people that are into that too. Like I remember staying like a few weeks at Adam Brewster's house in Tennessee, and he's like really, really religious. And and we went to like a Me Without You concert and stuff, and it was really cool. And it was like one of the first shows I'd probably ever, not one of the first shows, but like as an adult, like when you go as a kid to like shows, it's different than when you go like as an adult. And it was like, wow, like this is actually, like approaching with an open mind was really different. So that's a really interesting point though that you make, that it didn't have any direct correlation with the church. So like at the time, maybe that's why you like gravitated more toward it, and it was more rewarding in a way because it wasn't just
totally. And I think that like really motivated me. It was just fun, you know? And so I think like I really do believe that enjoying it so much like motivated me to practice all the time. I was just doing it for fun. I wasn't imagining that it would become like part of my career or anything like that.
And
so
it's weird in a way, like most religions are like overwhelmingly positive, I feel like, where like they're so encouraging. And it's like, as a kid, it's like when you have a high standard of what you want to do or how good you want to be, it's like, it's nice to fail sometimes. And when someone's telling you like, no, you're doing that wrong, or it's like you continually mess something up and you have to hone a skill and really gradually develop, like it creates a different aura around, like you said, you put hard work and dedication into it. So as you got better, you appreciated it more instead of just like whatever you kind of showed a bunch of people at your church, like, oh, Justin, that's great. Like, that's so awesome. And then like, no matter what you did, that would have been the reaction. It's like, even if you're really good at something, it doesn't really necessarily matter either way. So it's like, it's an interesting point. I've never thought about that. So that's really cool.
Thanks.
And it's interesting too, how many yo-yo players, I guess, I feel like that's just a thing in a lot of different churches where like, they kind of try to find something to attract younger people or like keep younger people interested. And like, it doesn't necessarily have to have that like super morally righteous message attached to it. It's just like, oh, this is a neutrally fun activity everyone can enjoy.
Totally.
So it's interesting that, because very quickly I went from having like 0 Christian friends in my life to like a lot of friends of different religions. And that's just in general. But like, yo-yoing is it's not a weird thing to attract a lot of different religious people, but like how vast and broad it is. Cause like it's super popular in Israel, and Mark Mangaran was telling me in New York, like he thinks it would do super well in Queens and like the really like Hasidic neighborhoods, because on Saturdays they can't use anything that's electronic. So it's like use a yo-yo all day long, and it's like, wow, that's like an interesting point. Like these things you never think about, you know what I mean? Yeah,
no LED yo-yos on Saturday.
No LED yo-yos on Saturday.
It's actually like I ended up performing for a number of Jewish communities, and at first I was like, why is the elevator taking so long? But realized that they stop the elevator at every single floor, like automatically, just so that no one would have to press the elevator button. So it's just like curious, you know, and
that's so crazy.
You never know where yo-yoing will like take you and like the new experiences. And I think it does teach you to like kind of have like an open mind, because you've gone to like, I mean, you've also traveled like the world and met a lot of different people from all over. So,
it's definitely a door opener.
Breaks you out of the Delaware bubble.
Oh my gosh. Harping back to Delaware, unfortunately, for a minute. So I guess like growing up, I always like to ask this question to people, because there's like a very, like when you're a kid and you're just into the regular things all kids are into, and then you kind of reach that age where you like, for kids who aren't necessarily in church, is when you're like, oh, I'm getting into like the punk rock stuff, or like I'm getting into hip hop, or whatever like divergent subculture you want to get into. So like, what kind of person or thing kind of really influenced you to get put on to cooler things? Because I feel like one of the first videos or earliest videos I can probably, like when I went on my like super nerd yo-yo scavenging, whatever you want to say, finding you, like I think it was MAR 2001 or 2002, and you're literally, It's when you had like a bald head and you're using a freehand one. And were you performing to Spider-Man, or did you have a Spider-Man mask on or something, right?
Yeah, I fabric painted the word Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And I thought it was like clever that my last name was Weber, that
I
should
didn't
be
think
like
about that. Wow.
a web-er with like the yo-yo.
Yeah. No, that's super tight. Like, things like that are so cool to me when kids have the foresight to do something like that. You know what I mean? Because no one's telling a kid like, oh, there's a double. You didn't know that there was an entendre when you were 11 or 12. You know what I mean? You have no idea what that means.
Yeah.
So for you to be able to make all those correlations that early,
it was just like,
to your sharp eye. You know what I mean? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just never like into comic books. Like I never read them growing up, so I felt
funnier.
I felt kind of like I knew I was kind of like posing in a weird way.
But to me, that just shows that like from day one, it was such a performance art piece to you. You know what I mean?
Oh, interesting.
You know what I mean? Or at least that's kind of the way I thought of it. And even to like a few years later, when you were like scoring music to your own freestyles or like videos and like there's just things that like when I got into yo-yoing, and now like everything that's creative is so homogenized because of the internet or whatever, but like at the time everyone had to be so different and come so original and unique, or else like no one was really gonna care. And it was like damn, like we're from Delaware and there's this guy who like really is like big in this community. This is so crazy. But so who, I guess, was that person for you or thing that kind of set you on the like more unique taste-way path, I guess you could word it as.
For yo-yoing or
not just
for
yo-yoing, just like art? Music, art, like in life, like your family, or was it, sometimes it's not just one person, you know what I mean? Sometimes,
yeah.
Like for me in general, it's just like kind of yo-yoing, or it'd be Seth, you know what I mean, who got me into like cooler sneakers and reading different blogs and just like teaching me how to research things more in depth, I guess you could say, or like whoever put you on to the cooler stuff, you know what I mean? Or maybe you were like
a
unique case where like I think
everyone
discovered it on your own.
No, everyone I think has someone.
Yeah, so like, who was it for you? What was it?
So music for sure was my cousin Kenny, who he's a fine artist, and my mom's side of the family has a lot of like artistic talent in there, and so there's like an architect, there's a lighting designer who did like Coachella and stuff like that.
That's so awesome.
And so the fine artist, Kenny Jensen, like he would, every time we saw him, I feel like, which wasn't, you know, maybe it was maybe once a year, once every other year.
Whatever,
yeah. And so he would like dump music on our computer somehow. I don't even remember how, I guess CDs back in the day. And
that was like a golden age of like early file transferring, or when you first get like those huge iPods and you could just go to your homie's music collection and drag and drop 60 gigs of MP3s onto not even 60 back in the day, it'd be like 10 gigs of music onto your iPod. It's like, oh, cool. Have every Ben Gibbard project ever. Like I can't wait to go home and listen to All Time Quarterback.
The iPods that you could like feel the hard drive spinning.
Yeah.
Or something. Yeah, so that with my cousin, he gave me like architecture in Helsinki, Sufjan Stevens, Arcade Fire, like all those. Yeah. And so he's just always been an inspiration. And also he would like incorporate me and my 8 siblings into his like artistic videos in Florida whenever we visited my grandparents down there.
You got a whole cast right there.
Yeah. Like he dressed my brother up in all yellow because he had like a yellow, red, blue man theme project going on, painted him all yellow. He set up like... Did you ask your mom for permission to do this, or were they just like out one day, or she was like chilling inside and comes out and then your brother is just yellow from it? I think she just understood that something was going to happen. You guys are staying in my house. No surprise. This is what it comes along with. Yeah. So yeah, and he would just like do really creative things, like set up lights and cast like... I remember juggling in a like Christmas video with him where he like cast colored lights as shadows onto the like his parents' house, and there was music going, and he also connected a keyboard to like lights that were on like us, and we had like a plastic color over the lights, so each one of us was like a different color when we pressed the keys. This is so next level for like just some, you know what I mean, random
like avant-garde and stuff. Like just some, because this is before even you could, like now I feel like anyone can almost be justified in doing any sort of project like that because you can put it online and like, oh, 10 people will see it, whatever, you know what I mean? Someone will see it, but it's like for your cousin to do this back then, and then it's like, oh yeah, I'm just going to show it to everyone when Christmas comes around and I'll send it to everyone in their email or whatever. It's like, wow, this is really dope. Like,
or send like a physical CD or DVD.
Yeah, it's like a next level Christmas card or something, you know what I mean? Or
totally. So cool. It's like more special or something, I guess.
And then also, I feel like, like beyond the Spider-Man shirt, like you've just always had a super interesting like eye for fashion and clothes and stuff like that. So where does that come from? Is that an early on route, or is that something that you developed? I feel like, again, that was like, ever since I've known you, you've been like, had a unique like sense of fashion. And,
thanks.
Yeah.
I think it was partly, the first step was like my four sisters telling me like what was cool or not, or looked good or not. And so
as a dude,
grateful to them.
As a dude, it's so funny because no one ever really, as a kid, no one's ever like, oh, bro, you look so good, or like, that's hot on you or something, you know what I mean? And then like the girls are always big upping each other like that. And, you know, unfortunately, you know, because men don't do it a lot or the world doesn't do it a lot, like, there's a lot of reasons, and I'm not going to go into all the systemic reasons, which we should, but it's interesting and just funny how, like dudes always have that one story where it's like, this one person or group of people, whoever, like kind of put me on to like what was good, or like gave me that confidence to like, oh, you should do this, and like that looks good, and it's not just what everyone else did, or you're not, that's case in point how you're not just dressing like everyone else that walks out of H&M, you know what I mean?
Totally. And I think it was also like definitely the Japanese yo-yo scene. Like all the competitors and just wearing bright pink shirts, like,
and they're cool as hell. It's like no one is ever gonna go up to those dudes. It's funny because we grew up, well, like you were homeschooled, but like when you grow up and like go to a regular school and everyone will like make fun of you for any reason, it's like you never dare wear a pink shirt or something. But then you see some guy who's like from Japan just looks super badass, and it's like he's cooler than anyone else in the room. Doesn't even care if anyone's looking at him. He's wearing that shirt so everyone looks at him, and he looks more ridiculous, but he knows he looks super cool and way cooler than you. And
totally.
It's just super interesting how yo-yo does that. But what else did your sisters do?
I think for them, I think it was more of like just the basic, like getting to the basic level where I wasn't just dressing like in a dorky manner anymore. And then the Japanese yo-yo is helping me like cross over to like, ooh, that could be cool. But I think it was also like thrift stores. And I think also watching like old movies and stuff like the Marx Brothers, because then I started wearing like, 1930s clothing, but like, or whatever, for costumes, or like my family has always been really into those movies and like very silly, and like our humor is just either very dry or goofy or whatever. And I think like just being open to wearing like goofy stuff and at thrift stores, like trying on suit jackets or like, but then sometimes it weirdly like just becomes kind of like cool, I guess, because you're just like,
because no one else is wearing that, and you look interesting and unique, and there's a fine line, because like you can be weird fedora guy at the Nickelback concert, or you can be like weird fedora guy that's like actually cool at the whiskey bar, or you know what I mean, or you're like the cool fedora guy yo-yoing. There's like, so it's a fine line between all these things. Marx Brothers,
it's tricky.
Smothers Brothers, cool, like Carrot Top, and who's the guy that smashes pumpkins? Gallagher.
Oh, yeah.
Are they cool? I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to say. And also, when I went to Japan, I remember them, Maron, the 5A player, he like took me to Uniqlo. And
how early was this?
Like,
what year was this?
I think it was 2005.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And so...
Your first time in Japan was 2004, right?
Actually 2005. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was that same exact trip. And I remember getting a t-shirt, an Astro Boy t-shirt, and it was just like a super fun graphic. It was like pale yellow, and I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. I'd have to think about that more.
No,
But,
that's a great answer.
Karen definitely influenced me too. So
My wife.
yeah.
I for real cannot believe. Are you rolling right now?
Yeah.
Yo, so we set all this up in Justin's room like an hour ago. I've stayed in 500 hotel rooms in my life. Like I've never ever. I've only gotten like a smoking charge one time in my whole life for every hotel I've ever fucking smoked weed in. Like I've never. It's crazy. And like we are in Justin's room for literally 2 minutes. And I set down a plastic container with like 10 pounds of stuff in it, and we get a noise complaint. And there's like 10 people at the hotel. This is insane. And they were kind of nice about it, but it was just super funny. And then we get downstairs, and they try to put us in literally a room with a desk that's like 8 feet long, and it was like, this ain't gonna work. It's like, well, we could give you the other room, but we normally charge people for that room. Some weird English guy. Anyway.
I imagine him with an English accent too.
Did he? What kind of accent did he have? Was that just me, or didn't he have an accent?
I think it was just New Jersey.
Okay.
Yeah.
People from Jersey are weird too.
It's like, we love you, New Jersey. We're in you right now.
No, you should Brexit away from the United States.
What if New Jersey just broke off and like sailed across the pond and became part of the UK?
They would have to go to Scotland, the worst part of the UK. Sorry, Scotland.
It's too cold up there.
So let's skip ahead a little bit, and then we'll go backward again. But because you were talking about, well, and let's go in order. It's all good. So I'm trying to think when the next good step to talk about. Did you have, so you started young when you were 11. I'm sure you went to Mitchell's soon afterwards, or?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember how long afterward, but there was Mitchell's, and iCubed.
Yeah, I went to iCubed a couple times. Yeah, that's funny. So these were two hobby stores in Delaware that sold yo-yos during the yo-yo boom, and they both had yo-yo clubs, but Mitchell's stayed in business longer, and the guy who ran the Mitchell's toy department, his name was Joe Mitchell. He was the American Yo-Yo Association president for, I think, maybe just a year.
Hey, Joe.
I don't know how long it was, but yeah, love you, Joe. I'm going to eventually do an interview with Joe, but,
nice.
You know, it's on the list.
That'll be a good one.
Yeah, he's got a lot of good history. That's the other thing is, like, you and I, we're obviously going to have to do more interviews, but it's just, like, we could talk for, like, we've already done 25 minutes, and we've scratched 2 seconds of your childhood.
Yeah.
So how was Mitchell's back in the 90s versus like when you went later, I guess? When you're a kid, everything seems bigger. So like, I'm sure things seemed different, or like the store wasn't bigger, but like things maybe seemed bigger, or like.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. Well, it was fun to go. I would try to like convince my mom to take me on a Friday when there was like tons of traffic from New York. I was gonna say, it's kind of a drive
from where we lived. Like, I wasn't into anything when I was a kid, so my parents were down to drive me every weekend because they were like, you're literally not doing anything else, so this is the best thing for you. But yeah, I could imagine like with a family of 10 with your parents, it's like, I don't know if we can drive you 45 minutes north to go to Yo-Yo Club, bud. Like,
yeah, totally. Yeah, so it wasn't every week, but it was like, it felt special, I guess, then.
Oh, yeah.
But also not too infrequently. But I remember meeting Sage, who taught like me a bunch of tricks, and that was really cool. I liked both stores. I think iCubed, honestly, I felt like it was easier to try out new yo-yos there because they were already like out of the package.
I only went to iCubed a couple times and I was super young, so I don't really remember, but that's funny. Because I would say the opposite, or, at Mitchell's, it was like, I feel like Joe would let anyone try anything, but maybe when, during the boom or whatever, it's like, you can't, if there's 100 people in the store, you can't just be giving out yo-yos to everyone to try or whatever.
Yeah, I think he would too, but it wasn't always Joe there.
Oh, right.
But nothing against anybody else, but I think and there was a little bit more space maybe at iCubed.
iCubed felt kind of fast and loose. Like it was almost like a mall kiosk that just grew into the store. They were like, man, these yo-yos are selling hot. We might as well get a store.
Yeah. Yeah, Mitchell's was definitely like tried and true.
Yeah, they
stuck
were
through
a
it.
department store for 40 or 50 years before yo-yos took off, and then the yo-yos just happened to be a thing they did too. And then, yeah.
It was, and like the contest also like led me to meeting like Shane Karen and like finding out how to like be sponsored by Omega and or that you could even be sponsored.
Yeah, that's so
And,
funny because when
yeah.
I first started yo-yoing and I discovered, when I started yo-yoing again like in 2005, and I was like, oh, there's a yo-yo club at Mitchell's. I thought it would be like a skate shop, and I'm like, oh, if I go in there and I'm like pretty good, maybe they'll like give me a discount or something. Little do I know they give like everyone a discount.
Oh, where? In Mitchell's?
Yeah.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
like in other, like if you're, I mean, it doesn't really work that way in music or whatever, but like in skateboarding, if you're like one of the good like local guys who's like better than everyone else, like you can get like a shop sponsorship, or like the local shop will sponsor you, like in hopes that you'll eventually go on to like get sponsored by one of the bigger companies. And it was funny because after I got sponsored, or after I won Worlds, Joe was really happy for me, but he was also like, it's all downhill from here. You're never going to buy yo-yos from me.
Yeah.
It was mad funny.
Thanks, Joe, for letting your young ones fly off onto their own.
Oh my gosh, dude. All the nights that we would just eat pizza on the floor. And I know you would come through like randomly, just show up when it was just me and Danny working there one night or whatever. But,
Oh, yeah. I almost forgot you worked there.
yeah, for quite a while after.
That's true,
like,
yeah.
when Yo-Yo Club was like dead in the water for a bit, but then like it was super weird because it felt like we still had a thriving scene, but it's like obviously no one cared as much, or I don't know.
Yeah.
It was a super weird time in yo-yo, but
People come in waves. I feel like New York Yo-Yo Club is kind of that way a little bit too. Like, I mean, I haven't been in a while.
Yeah.
I think it's just been hard with COVID actually, but yeah, people come and go and like, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting you know so much about that iCube store, because I always wonder like what happened to them, or where like a lot of people now when they resell vintage clothes will find like old record stores that shut down or something and find whoever owned that store and then be like, yo, like what old stuff do you have? Like, oh, you have all these old Grateful Dead t-shirts? Like, I'll buy all of them.
Oh, yeah.
I've always wanted to do that with old hobby stores and be like, yo, do you have any old freehand ones? Or like I used to always stop in hobby stores and toy stores to try to find those when I was a kid, but
yeah, I remember playing with the Viper there for the first time.
At iCubed?
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, I bought my Omega sling bag from there. I bought a Raider from there. This is before I knew Mitchell's existed. This was like 98, like the first wave of the boom. And then obviously once I got back into it, I was hardcore Mitchell's. But
yeah, that's fun.
yeah, so
Fox Run Shopping Center and
yeah, in Bear, Delaware, which was closer for us too, yeah.
that was probably the middle ground for like
Between 202 and
you and I, yeah.
yeah. James Keenan just bought a house like literally right across the street from Mitchell's, like in like right before south of Talleyville, like in the neighborhood right across to it. It's all boring Delaware.
Hi, James.
Yeah, you gotta come down. So maybe when you come down for Christmas or something, we can all get together. If you come down and see your family for Christmas,
That'd be fun.
I'm trying to think of a good next yo-yo question to ask you, because you talked about meeting Shane and then being like, oh, I could get sponsored. So like, how did that kind of come about, or how did you even? Because when you're a kid, you're not actively thinking like, I want to get good enough to get sponsored. You're just kind of, especially when you have a yo-yo club to go to, there's indirectly people that encourage you to get better, like a Shane or Sage, a yo-yo club. There's reasons that you continue to get better, and then you have contests to look forward to. And so like, what kind of was that progression as far as like how you got better? Was it on purpose, or did you just kind of over time gradually got really good and then you're like, oh wow, I gotta?
Yeah, I think it was just, I was having fun with it. And so I met Shane. I saw him perform as like Batman with the 2A.
Yeah, that's so, I remember like when I first started yo-yoing and watching all those MAR videos and being like, everyone is so goofy. Like Shane did the 2A Batman, or reading Joe's write-ups, like getting back into yo-yoing and reading Joe's AYA write-ups and being like, oh, Shane jumped off stage and kissed his mom and all this shit. And I'm like, oh my God, like, because I would read through all this stuff just nerding out, and it's like, yo-yo used to be so fun. It is very funny still.
Yeah.
But, so you met Shane and then...
Yeah, and I also one notable part of my yo-yo history was that I got last place in the advanced division when it was like the compulsories. and my brother got first in the novice division.
Okay.
And I just thought that was the most unfair thing ever. I was like, I'm better than him. I started crying, like my dad was there, and I was like,
Oh,
how did he get first? I got last. And I know it was totally an irrational, like,
you're a kid though.
I was like 12.
And this is like, dude, when you're a kid, every kid wants that like bar to be able to gauge how good they are. You know what I mean? And a contest is that perfect bar where you can say, oh, I won, so I'm the best. And later you kind of learn that's irrelevant. But then, yeah, your little brother who probably doesn't give a shit is just like, oh, cool, I won. And you're like, this is my life. Like, what do you mean I got last?
Yeah.
And you're in basically the pro division, like you said, and he's in, you know, a bunch of kids who don't care, like the little brothers who come and, people who are just starting out and not as good as the advanced division. But
yeah, like the fact that I didn't even like do the novice division, like I skipped it, like it didn't like register in my brain like as some like credit.
You just want the number, you know what I mean? When you're a kid, you just want the number.
But eventually Shane invited me to go up to Northeast Regionals and meet Carol LaFlash, who was the Omega representative. And so that was fun. So I went up with him.
That's such a, like, I wonder what Shane saw in you at the time, or like, just because you were from Delaware, or like, what was, because it's not like,
I don't know.
I guess Mitchell's is kind of like Mitchell's is kind of like a yo-yo hub or whatever, you know, and it would be smart for them to have a representative in a place where, you know, they have contests and you're a person in that community that can say like, oh, buy Omega yo-yos. So that kind of makes sense, but it's just weird to think about because it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Omega was always super weird to me about how they chose who was on the team or who did what.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was just that Shane and I became friends, and then I think he was probably motivated by like, this would be cool if I had a friend on a team, or I'm not sure. I don't know what exactly, but we would like have sleepovers and like modify yo-yos, like the Omega yo-yos.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, especially with the Omega yo-yos, you have to modify them.
We dyed them like into different patterns and stuff, and so and he was into art too. He was like into graffiti art, but he would do it on like cardboard in his garage and stuff. So there was that artistic / yo-yo like shared thing. I think that was fun. But then I ended up like saving up money, like I guess mowing lawns and stuff and like taking my mom up to Northeast Regionals while she taking me up, and it was in the winter, so it was like 18
freezing
degrees, literally 18 degree weather. We were like, you know, on a low budget. So we were like camping in a campground, but in our car, and just had tons of sleeping bags, like in 18-degree weather. Was you guys,
or is it just you and your mom?
No, I think we just met him there, but it was just me and my mom going up there, and she was like really supportive.
Yeah.
And,
rad.
So, and then
I've never thought about doing that before, like to save money. To like when you go to a contest, stay at like a campground and just sleep in your car overnight or something, because you totally can.
It was like a Yogi Bear Jellystone Park, like one of those.
Yeah, like one of the branded camping grounds. Those are so rad though. When you're a kid, those are fun, you know what I mean?
Giant Yogi the Bear.
And it's so expensive too, you know what I mean? Who wants to like, and it's not like you're going to Florida where it's like, oh, like we can bring the family. We can justify this somehow. It's like, do we really want to come out of pocket $500-600 for a weekend so Justin can go to Northampton, Massachusetts? Like, when we have a family of 10 to support, or like I totally get that.
Yeah, and my family was usually, most things were up to like the individuals to like save up for something like college or whatever. And so, but I think, and then Carol LaFlash was like, you should go to Las Vegas and get accepted, or like meet the president, see if he'll accept you onto the team. And so that was like another year of like raising money, I probably worked at McDonald's, but like didn't work much. So they just like put me in the lobby, and I was really bored. And every Saturday when they were like, we're really slow, does anybody want to go home? And like my hand was the first to go. I was like, who wants to work here? So but I ended up saving up money to bring my mom to Las Vegas with me. which is kind of funny, like going to Las Vegas with your mom as a 14-year-old. And yeah, obviously it was a family resort and everything, but not anymore, apparently.
The place where the Omega Worlds was? Or?
I think it was the only resort in Las Vegas that didn't have slot machines, and now they do, I think, or something.
Funny. Yeah, but, Are they like really religious people too that own Omega? Or?
Not that I know of.
Yeah.
I don't know.
They just wanted it to be like super family oriented or whatever.
They really seem to like value sportsmanship, I guess, was their main thing. Because I didn't even win that year. I got third.
Yeah.
And then they had me on the team.
That's still good, though. Because it's still, like, at the time, because it was the Omega Worlds, right?
Yeah.
So they were, like, branding their version of the World Yo-Yo contest. And it was, like, you had to use the Omega Yo-Yo, right? No matter what. Because you were trying to get on the Omega team. So obviously you're going to... use the Omega Yo-Yo. But like when Hiroyuki Suzuki, Mickey, when he had to use like a hyperwarp heavyweight ring or whatever, which like obviously he's not used to. And it was just like he would go to like Worlds and do a perfect freestyle and then go to Omega Worlds and get like have like 4 restarts on
totally. Yeah.
And then Justin would be doing like way harder tricks on the same yo-yo, and it's like, how do these two things connect?
Just had the advantage, yeah. And it was fun. It was a fun time getting to travel and like and see all the same like players from Japan and Switzerland and all over.
Yeah,
so
was that your first kind of
cool.
big contest outside of the Mid-Atlantic region? I guess NER is a Mid-Atlantic region. But
I'm trying to think. It might have
Worlds
been
before then, or
I can't exactly remember. I think I did go to Worlds, but I'm not sure. Yeah, because I know for a fact that once I got on the team, that's what enabled me to like travel to Chico for nationals and Orlando for Worlds. So yeah, I think like without that, I definitely wouldn't have been able to like get to every contest like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I still haven't been to BAC, so that was like an outlier contest. But for me, you
didn't miss much.
Okay. Well, yeah. And I just, like that gave me a lot of performance experience because I think I was treating it as like, this is kind of fun. I get to choreograph these tricks and like to the music. And that was the most exciting part for me. And I wasn't really into like, the technical, like fast yo-yoing to like score the highest points. I wanted to win, but I had like a different system or something I was operating by. Yeah. So
there was such a resonance then on like originality, and really it was embarrassing to do something that was not original all the time, you know what I mean? And now it's kind of like it's commonplace to do just what makes sense versus like going the extra mile, and it's like it's just so crazy how things have kind of shifted, and I don't know. I don't really know where the differentiation is, or I don't know. But.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. It's like, I mean, there's definitely a lot of new yo-yoing that I'm like, I don't know how you do that. I need to learn some newer stuff too. But
yeah, I feel like, no, for sure. I feel like even though now, like, you're still one of the more original players just because, like, you focused on you, and it's like you were already really good 10 years ago, so it's like you're still going to be really good now. Like, it's just you're going to be more refined and,
thanks.
like, I'm trying to, like, when you create something that's timeless, it's going to stay timeless forever, you know what I mean? It's like you can watch what's the video that you have called with all the tricks in it, with the red backdrop, the burgundy backdrop, and...
Yeah, it's just like the one with octopus. I'm not sure what it's called.
The video, does it have a name or no?
I don't think so.
I swear it had a name, but I forget. It had like the hat animation in the beginning, or the stop. What was in the beginning? Was it stop motion or something? Or
I know it had some kind of like at the end, some maybe speeding up of the video and like some reverse video.
Something like that. No, it was really dope at the time. Yeah, because even videos back then were like, that was basically your album, you know what I mean? It's like you were going to put out like this series of 10 tricks or whatever you'd be working on. So this was like your presentation to everyone, you know what I mean? And now it's just kind of like a trick you throw up on Instagram, or like, a series of tricks that I threw up on Instagram, but now in a YouTube format. Like, it's never a project, or like no one's going out to do something. I don't know, like it used to be.
Yeah, I remember showing that at Virginia State's. Tony, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Tony hosted like an after party and showing the video like on a big screen at the after party. And then he gave me a like John Higbee painted yo-yo as like a gift. And I was like, oh, he was just like appreciative of the video or the effort or something.
Yeah, it's super cool. Like it's not, I don't know, like, because Tony to me like epitomizes what like the regular yo-yo player is nowadays, where it's like, to them, yo-yoing is truly like, you know, a recess from their regular life. It's why I named Recess, my brand Recess.
Oh, nice.
Like,
yeah.
You know, he has like this crazy, intense, super demanding job at a law firm where he's like super high on the ladder and has a ton of responsibilities, a partner at a law firm. And then it's like, oh, the 10 minutes a day he has to actually like catch up and be in his own brain, he like chooses to yo-yo or like whatever, you know what I mean? So
yeah.
that to me is like super cool. And they do things like that though, because they appreciate, you know, what yo-yoing does, and he sees like what you're doing, and it's a way to reciprocate the feeling in a way, even though it's like just because you still remember it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, just kind of some little yo-yo. It's like, it's cool that it, you know, resonates with you literally 15 years later.
Totally. That's cool. I didn't know recess was that deep of a meaning. I thought it was kind of just like school recess.
No,
but
I don't want to talk too much about myself,
I like it.
even though that I have already. But
no, it's cool. I like
it. So what was you got to travel a lot with the Omega, and then like, what was the first year you competed at Worlds? Was that, I don't think it was 2003, or was it?
So I know Y3A.
That was 2003, right?
Yeah, I think the first time might have been 2002 though.
But the first year you competed, what year was that? Do you remember?
In Worlds, I think it might have been 2003.
Okay.
Yeah, because like.
Did you final all the years you competed at Worlds? I want to say the real Worlds, not yet.
Yeah, up until like compulsories. Because when they started doing 1 minutes, I couldn't enter.
Oh yeah, it's hard. Yeah.
But every year, and I think what it was is because I remember Black winning 2001, I think, 1A, and that freestyle really like impressed me, and like he had a foot trick in there, and then I started doing foot tricks based off of him.
I never thought about that. That's really funny.
He had like a
foot
mount.
tricks come from,
Yeah.
You know what else is in that Black freestyle? The first tunnel ever.
Oh really?
Yeah, he does like a Singapore sling or whatever it is, like where it goes over and then like it kind of goes like a bucket over your shoulder or whatever.
Oh yeah.
The actual trick, but like he does that and then it tunnels down his arm into a wrist mount. And so when he tunnels down, he just goes and looks at the audience like the black way. And I watched it years later after that Ando video came out, exactly like that. Yeah, and I was like, whoa, that's crazy.
He has really good stage presence.
Yeah. Jason Lee also told me that Scott Coyle had a tunnel trick around that same time too. And I'm like, what? Like, how are these things like, how are these concepts around years? It just, you know what I mean? Like these players like Scott Coyle or Jason Lee or all these people, Black, where it's like, yo, like these people who think about these things this way, like when you create something timeless, it's that way forever. So it's like, Black creates, I mean, I don't think he created tunnels and thought about them in that way, but it's like he did this trick that in 2001 could be a trick that won the World Yo-Yo Contest in 2008. And it's just like, that's crazy too.
Totally. Yeah. Even Taka had like long string yo-yoing in his AP division, like years before I ever like tried it, you know? And so.
But again, that was just how it was back then, where it was very much, like that used to be a thing at Worlds where it was like everyone every year would have their trick. Like, do you remember yours in 2005 was the like behind the wrist, like trapeze and his brother grab kind of thing?
Oh, nice.
Like, right, because that was like when everyone was doing like the cross arm stuff. So like you did one where it was like syncopated to the music that like went side to side or something, and it was like, oh wow, like that was crazy.
Oh,
and that was like your trick for the year. It was like your banger at the end of the freestyle, like that closed it out. Like everyone had one, you know what I mean? And now no one ever does shit like that. It's just like, oh, here's my 3 minutes.
Yeah, man.
So, yeah, I guess I'm trying to think of more, I guess I don't want to say world's history, but because yo-yoing was in such like a golden age at that time, I guess you could say, or like it was really reaching like a renaissance period where like the equipment was like not catching up to the tricks, so like the tricks were like outweighing the equipment, and like people were getting really creative and like working around the equipment. So it like bred a lot more innovation, and now like because everything is so easy and it's less of a challenge, like it brings in like a lower level of mentality for like a person who isn't as creative to be able to get into it and like stay into it, which is great. Like we should have all the yo-yo players we can, but like with more people getting interested in something, it like the cream rises to the top, and it's like when there's only 10,000 people involved, the 1% of it, it seems a lot larger, you know what I mean? And now it's like just shrinks all the time, which is, not a bad thing or a good thing, but it's just an interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I didn't think about it that way. That's really interesting. Yeah.
So being on Omega was really cool because, like you said, they really hooked players up. Like they did a good job supporting players, especially when... I guess it's weird because the industry at the time was a little different. Like now it's just like no one really gets anything paid for. You know what I mean? Like it might be.
Yeah.
And again, it's because there's more people involved, I guess you could say. Like getting sponsored back then was very upper echelon. You know what I mean? Like no one was really... And even then, it's funny because it's not, Omega was really the only people getting everything paid for. Like a lot of other teams were getting stuff paid for, but not everyone was like getting the whole deal and like getting a per diem or something like that. Like Omega hooked it up because it was owned by a lawyer who like really understood how these corporate things worked.
Yeah, I didn't even know that.
But like, so like you had said, you and Shane were like modifying yo-yos, and like at what time did like when did you kind of start to realize that the equipment was more holding you back, or not holding you back, but like, I'm trying to think of the right way to word it, because you obviously are still doing really well with it, and some people, when they, like, if you're a musician, you might choose to like use an older piece of equipment or whatever because it like gives you a certain sound or something. So it's not like you were using these yo-yos for that reason, but like at the same time, you know what I mean? It was a disadvantage, but it wasn't like tricks were to a point now where you had to have this new piece of equipment or whatever. So like, when did you start to kind of feel like that, or what were you?
Yeah, it was a couple of things because, like using a yo-yo that most people didn't like, or, just wasn't suited for the competitive scene.
Right.
I knew that people were like, would like smack talk Omega or whatever. But then I didn't really care because I was getting like $300 a contest to like go towards a flight or the hotel or whatever. And that far outweighed like the experience of meeting all these awesome people, just, and all the fun that it was to stay like in the hotel for 5 nights with everybody. Yeah. It just far outweighed like the yo-yo and the yo-yoing itself. Yeah. And so it was like so much more worth it. And then on the other hand, like, well, I think the narrow yo-yo, the hyperwarp heavy wing, I think it just made my skills sharper too. And I don't feel like it was that much of a drastic difference between like other yo-yos once it was modified, and it was very easy to modify. And like Mark Montgomery also had his coral ring version, and Shane and I adopted that as well. I definitely got like a slice from an X-Acto knife trying to make one of those right before nationals, and had to get, I think I got stitches, but I remember like competing at nationals in like, I don't know, 2006 or 7 or something. And my finger was like bleeding by the time I walked off the stage.
That's awful.
But yeah, it was just, but I used the hyperwarp heavy wing more than the coral mod. and it was less likely to slice my finger, like injure my finger. Although sometimes if you didn't use the side caps, like the metal ring could like cut you. But yeah, I think it just made my skills sharper. And yeah, it was, I mean, you had the Renegade at one point. And eventually you had like the Buzz-On yo-yos and the SPR kit, and like all these other yo-yos came out eventually, like the freehand and all that. But besides that, it wasn't really that much of a difference.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. I didn't think about it that way.
Today, it's a huge difference from that. But
back then, it was like all kind of like everyone had to modify their yo-yos, so it wasn't like you just had to modify yours a little bit more than like just coning them or just doing this or just doing that. It was a little bit different. So. It
was literally just taking the side caps off, putting regular hyperwarp spacers in, a Duncan friction sticker on one of the sides, not both, so it wasn't too responsive, and like cleaning the bearing, and like that was it.
This is like the equivalent of like Jimi Hendrix stringing the guitar backward, and it's like, do the pickups even work that way? Like, does it? Okay, I guess you're just making it work. Like that was it. Like how I would look at those yo-yos, where it's just like, how do you even use this? Eddie had one today. And like I picked it up and was just throwing it around, and I was like, there was so much backspin. Like when I threw it, like by the time it reached into the string, it started like spinning behind my body. You know what I mean? Like when you throw it to the side, it like the last 6 or 7 inches of string, it feels like so much resistance trying to like bring it like into the arc earlier or something.
Oh, gotcha.
Because it's so skinny, and then you throw like the super wide spacers in it, and it's just like a flat wall all the way up, and like
totally,
it's such a weird design, but like I remember watching you play with them back in the day and being like, I don't know how you do this, like this is insane. And then getting one or trying to play with one, and then be like trying to emulate tricks you would do and just be like, wow, like it makes you appreciate even more like how difficult your tricks were on those yo-yos, because it was like, holy cow, like
oh gotcha.
It's like the equivalent of doing it on like a no jive, or like it's about the same width as a
I didn't know
hyperwarp. I think it is, it probably is, to be honest.
Oh, the width,
the width,
not the spin, but
no, not the spin. I mean, arguably, like you're not getting much more, you know.
It was also like actually the narrowness of the yo-yo like actually helped you like land certain like more complicated mounts and stuff. And like I'll use like a giant like wide yo-yo for performing now, but if I try to do octopus with that, like I can't like easily get all of that. Like it's possible, but it's just like it gets clunky a little bit. So and also the chameleon, it actually proportionally has like a narrow width to how like the diameter is. So I think it actually that I like that style, kind of like the narrow style. So I don't know, it could be something that I think more people are obviously doing the very slim yo-yos. But I could see people doing more like relatively slim 1A yo-yos, but not quite so slim as what they have been doing. But
it was interesting at the time because like everyone was trying to push wider, and I mean they weren't really trying to like make a yo-yo that was competitively, like there's no money in that, you know what I mean? What are they gonna do? Like go to Toys R Us or whoever's buying hyperwarp heavyweight rings and be like, oh yeah, all the kids are competing with these, like no one's gonna care. Like, you put it on the shelf, does it sell? Great.
And Yo Mega, was all about like the beginner yo-yo. Meeting the masses.
Where the money in the industry comes from. Like it's funny that all these people on like the yo-yo BST forums or like within our community, like they get so up in arms or like they're so protective or feel like there's just this weird gatekeeping mentality, or I'm trying to think the right way to put it. It just doesn't feel like very welcoming to beginners, and they don't realize like this is where all the money comes from to do all of this stuff. Or like without beginner players, like there wouldn't be a Duncan, and like Duncan, I mean not anymore. Duncan still does sponsor like a lot of contests and pick up a lot of the bill at a lot of the contests, but like, back in the day, they used to literally, or at least that's the way that Greg made it seem, like they used to pay for half of the contest. So it's like, holy cow, like, you know what I mean? And they're not able to do that without selling Imperials and Butterflies. Like they can't sell freehand NXTs all day and then be like, all right, like we'll fork over 15 grand to pay for Worlds and our staff and everything else. Like it's all
totally.
this stuff comes from somewhere, and like no one really thinks about that. So it was interesting. And I, being younger, I kind of was hip to that, where like, oh wow, he's actually getting paid to be here in a way, or you know what I mean? You were actually getting benefits from that a lot of other players weren't. So it was like, it made sense, you know what I mean? You weren't like sacrificing, it was just different. And everyone, you know what I mean? People go to colleges they don't want to go to sometimes, or like, because the program is better to do what they want to do, whatever, you know what I mean? There's gives and takes in life.
Yeah. So. I think there also is a lot of like, there's a lot of trading of yo-yos going on and not enough like yo-yoing too.
Yeah. Right.
So it's like, well,
that's the consumerism in yo-yoing is insane. Yeah.
So I think I was just also never just super obsessed with like the yo-yo I was using. I just liked like yo-yoing.
Right, yeah.
So then it didn't really matter which one. I just figured, it's as long as you stick to one, you'll get used to it, and then you can do anything. So
that's so funny. You'll just do anything with this. It's like riding a bike. This bike will be the one bike you ride forever.
There's got to be some other like analogy or metaphor that has to do with that out there somewhere. Like
I don't know, because like you said, everyone back in the day used to look at Omega like it was like a leprosy kind of thing. You know what I mean? No one wants to play with that, and then like you were actually making it look good and doing like really cool stuff on it, and then it also. I think it says a lot about yo-yoing too, that like after you kind of left Omega, it's like, oh, no one can really support me or do for me what Omega's going to do. So like, I'm not going to yo-yo for anyone else. You know, not that you wouldn't have, but it's just like, you aren't going to go actively pursue another sponsorship that was going to do less for you, that you're going to have to do more than you were doing for Omega. You know what I mean? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I think I did. When that happened, I did feel like I was having to use the same yo-yo all the time. And then once the team dissipated, I was like, okay, I want to be free now. Like, and I just want to be able to use any kind of yo-yo, any style of yo-yo. There are a few yo-yo companies I feel like that produce a really good yo-yo in every single style. I mean, Yo-Yo Factory is one that does a good job, and a few others, but but when I was asked to like be on another team, I just felt like, actually, I spent like 6 years being on one team. I kind of want to just do my own thing.
Yeah.
And looking back, I'm like, oh, maybe I should have like been nicer to people or something, or been more open or something. But I don't know.
There's like levels, and I mean, you were on like a tier 1, you know what I mean? Like Division 1 kind of sponsorship, and it's like there's only so many of those to go around, and it's like at the time, even those Division 1 sponsorships were slowly depleting from what they were. Like, it wasn't like being on Yo-Yo Jam was like being on Yo-Yo Jam in 2005 when it was, later, or any other team, you know what I mean? It all was slowly kind of coming down more and more. And it's like any system kind of goes that way with, it all harps back to the internet, where it's like people really needed representatives back then to present their company to people, and like they needed someone in the community, you know what I mean? And now there's so much user-generated content. Like 3/4 of what you would do as a sponsored player is done by people who already pay for the product. So like, why would there's no money to pay someone else to do that when that's already created by someone else, or you know what
That's
I mean?
A good point. Yeah, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
There's like no need for Pedro Flores anymore, sadly, but bring him back.
Yeah.
But then like that also makes a live performance special. And I think that's what I love to do ultimately. Obviously in COVID, it's more of like videos and stuff, but like, I think there's something special about a live performance. And I think I always enjoyed doing the competitions for that matter.
Which is an interesting point, because like I think most people who compete want to do it it's not like a thing to like show off. No one's really doing it for like the performance aspect of it like you were. And that was kind of my next question about like, when did you see your yo-yo career go toward the more performance heavy aspect of it versus like that even though like I would call it competitive aspect, you were saying like you were doing it to like not solely focus on the competing part, but to also harp more on competing and not just, or harp more on the performance and not just solely like, look at all these difficult tricks I can do, like look how I'm doing them. And so when do you think you kind of started to do that more with yo-yoing instead of just purely focusing on like innovating tricks and like trying to be world champion or whatever you'd say you were doing before, like being a company representative and like more so like the yo-yo like artist? And because it's not even now, you know what I mean, it's like you, Higby, Dazzling Dave, like
Mark
Hayward, like you could kind of throw me in there, but I don't really do like the performance part of it. It's like more so like the educational part of it or whatever. So it's like there's less than, 5 people or just 5 people in the whole country doing it, and you're one of them. So it's like, when did you kind of think that was going to go in the direction it did with your yo-yo? And I mean, why did it kind of go that way? Because like you said, you've always focused on the performance aspect, but...
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, so in 2008 is when the Team Omega dissipated, and I think I just got bored with the competition, like the technical aspect of the competition, and I found that I wasn't winning too. I wasn't like getting first place. So I think it was also like, but I think partly that was like my tricks were so difficult. It was like how Kieran Cooper was saying, in the Netflix series, like he would try these risky tricks but not land them. And so he would kind of like, risk doing the tricks, but he would gain maybe like, like honor from other yo-yoers because he tried the risky trick and stuff. And so I think my focus was more on like pushing the like envelope of like what's possible, and I wasn't quite as focused on the technical aspect. So even from the beginning, I wasn't exactly, even though I did want to win, but I realized like I'm just kind of like bored of this. Like I've been doing this for a while, and so the team wasn't there anymore. So I also didn't have that like I'm gonna have this stipend to go to the competitions and keep going and going. And so then I think I had to like shift gears, and I was also getting ready to like go into, I was in college. And so I was also focused on that. And I think I just started doing the AP division because I think it just made sense. Like I've always worn this hat and like bowler hat for who knows, probably Marx Brothers is the reason, or something like that from the 1930s, like just an obsession with whatever decades past or something. And and then just like realizing, I think that I've always combined it with, the music in a fun way. But I think it was just that like I started seeing that like you could make money too, or like people have valued it. Not so much that you can make money, but like people valued like watching your performance, and they enjoyed it. And like, I enjoyed it. People enjoyed it. This was like a win-win situation.
Right.
And like other yo-yoers that I met, they would like, demo at schools and send out like 90 letters in a year and get like 4 back and like perform at those schools and make money doing it and sell yo-yos. And that was one of the things I was like, I should try this and see where it could take me. And then, just like getting to yo-yo at my like freshman convocation, that was like probably it might still be the largest like live audience I've had technically, because it was like 4,000 freshmen at University of Delaware. And it was just like a 3-minute, like 1A little like thing.
Which is so funny because...
Or 2-minute or however.
Like they probably approach you like, wow, like you're this amazing yo-yo guy, and you like go on stage and do like octopus for 3,000 people. You know what I mean? Or did you do like other stuff too? Or I'm sure you did like an actual performance and not just like your 3-minute from Worlds, did you? No,
I think I definitely did probably some repeaters or something, or
just
like
something fun,
I think it was dynamic enough. Looking back, I'm not sure like how visible it was, but it seemed to be like the center of attention for a bit.
That's so awesome.
This like photographer from Delaware like found me somehow and did an article on me, and I was a freshman in college and I had braces that year and the same buzz cut that I'd had for a while. And so, yeah, it was, I don't know, that was fun. And just like in high school, I did it for like my choir concerts, like my choir director, like she was like, yeah, you should do like a, yo-yo thing in the middle of each choir concert that we have like, twice a year, once at Christmas, once at the end of the spring time. And so that was just like, it's just seeing people like reach out to me and be like, we want to do something.
Makes such a big difference. It really is really encouraging. And it's like, wow, like people really care. And like, it's funny because looking back, like automatically I'm like, it's like that annoying thing when you go over to the in-laws and they're like, oh, the yo-yo guy, like you want a yo-yo? Like, and then everyone's at Thanksgiving like, hope you brought your yo-yo with you. And then like it gets annoying as you're older, but when you're like 12 or 13, it's like, wow, like I'm the yo-yo guy. And even when you're like 16 or 17, it like, if it's anyone other than just anyone in your family or whomever making yo-yo seem cool or giving you props or yo-yoing it reinvigorates something inside you where you're like, all right, I'm on the right track here. I'm doing something cool with yo-yoing and not just the regular shit that everyone else is doing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So yeah, that definitely helps, like growing up. And I mean, like you said, you've kind of always had those performance opportunities. And then moving to New York, I'm sure like it seems like there's a lot more of a thriving performance scene there than there is in more other cities, or like there's people who perform in every city, but it's like, I guess New York maybe goes to another level, making sure people have opportunities that like want to perform. There's places you can perform and get paid, and like even though it might not be very much sometimes or whatever, there's always some opportunity, it seems like, or like it's in big cities, so there's lots of stuff going on.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I think that was definitely like a motivation for moving to New York. And,
right.
Like aside from doing like illustration and design or whatever. And yeah, it just kind of made sense. Like I was in Delaware, ended up like my friend and brother helped me get a job at the Apple store and then worked there for a couple of years and then transferred to one of the New York stores. And I actually ended up yo-yoing for the Delaware store meeting at one point. And it was actually in the Queen Theater. And so it was just
that's funny.
Whenever I get a chance to yo-yo in like a theater or like a cool venue or space, like it just feels more like special. Like, and with like, people that I've worked with or like I'm familiar with, and like the Apple community was, open-minded and very creative and appreciated it so awesome. Much, and so that was fun, and ended up performing for the New York store meeting too. And that was at the French Institute in this cool theater that actually, I don't even think in the theater there, they have any speakers, like equipment. I don't think, because the acoustics are so good in that theater. They might actually, but like, I think when they do interviews there, like they don't even need to like mic them or something.
Wow.
It's like just fairly small, like maybe 400 people or plus fit in there. But yeah, I think there definitely were a number of opportunities there. Like there was a juggling convention. I didn't need a car either. I didn't have a car. I was just like borrowing my parents' car to like go to work or get dropped off. So I was like, I need to move somewhere where I don't need a car. And New York is like the closest place.
Also like the most expensive place. And like, it's so funny where you're like, oh, where can I go that I just don't need a car? Like, oh, New York.
Yeah, I know.
That's the easiest way ever.
Yeah, and like the fact that I heard, I think I saw other people from the store transferring to New York, a New York store. I was like, oh, you can do that? Like, and it took like 6 months to be able to like, had to keep asking the managers like, hey, could you put this through, put this or whatever. But eventually it happened. But yeah, like, in Delaware, like there's no juggling convention. But in New York, like the very first month I moved there, there's one.
Oh, wow.
And I go and I like meet someone who's a DJ and used to like DJ disco parties in like New York and in Japan and everywhere. And she's a juggler too. And she's like, I work for this like company called National Circus Project, and they like entertain schools on Long Island, and they teach them how to do circus stuff. And yeah, you should call this guy and see if you can get a job with him. So that was like my first like circus job. That's like right. In New York, and ended up performing at the juggling convention the next year. And the cool thing with the juggling conventions is they always do like pretty professional like Saturday night show, like a showcase where everyone has to like buy a ticket. They come watch like, 2-hour show or something with an intermission, and they bring in jugglers from all over the world. And so I've always seen that as like a cool thing in relation to the yo-yo competition. And I know like the World Yo-Yo Contest, I believe, used to take place at the IJA competition, like in 92 through 97.
Okay.
And I never knew that. Like they used to be in the same thing. And so I think like in the future, like, the juggling convention and the yo-yo competitions could borrow from each other or even like combine more. And I think that would be really cool. And like, I would love to see like a yo-yo show at a contest where it's not a competition. We're just having the best, showcase yo-yo performers, maybe even a juggler or a pizza dough spinner or a trompo spinner. Like,
it's always interesting to me how jugglers, I feel like kind of even from the beginning, I guess maybe it's more visually appealing than yo-yoing, but it just always seems like they are more so like from the beginning you're like instantly ready to perform in a way or something, or everyone, I guess like who they had to look up to are performers, versus like in yo-yoing it's like the cool people to look up to are like Yuki, or like they perform but it's not the same as like a Gentry would perform or someone where it's like you're a character, versus like Yuki who is just like, oh, he's just doing this on stage because this is like the way he vibes. It's like, you know what I mean, there's like personalities versus like just not enthusiasts, people who are like really passionate and that shows through, versus someone who's like worked really hard on like their public persona and like how you visually look. And totally. And jugglers I think are always just so aware of that, and like from the beginning it's like this showcase thing, perfect example, where it's like everyone in juggling, like I said, it's like they're ready to go almost and perform. And what do you think the difference is between those?
I mean, they do have a lot of different kinds of competitions too, or like competition divisions, right? And so jugglers can also be very like kind of stoic or like just there without much expression, because they're just focusing on like the difficulty of the trick or whatever. So that's there too. But they have the competition, the vendors, like open like gym time or whatever, and various like games or whatever. But also they have the show. So I just think like, I don't know, the AP division tends to be like, does it have to be a competition, or should it be a competition, but can't there also be like a show? But yeah, I don't know. I think,
and I guess juggling kind of stems from the circus, like you were talking about, which is a performance in itself. So it's like your whole history comes from that, versus yo-yoing.
True.
It's like, what is the history of yo-yoing? It's like a game, or it's not a weapon, but some people call it a weapon, even though it's not a weapon. You know what I mean? It's like there's no real history for there's a history, but it's not like with juggling where it's like, oh, people have juggled under the big top for years, so it's like, of course, you know what I mean? It's in the Ringling Brothers Ballet Circus, I think, logo, like someone juggling, but like
totally,
that's not a thing in yo-yoing. And
so I guess it's just new like territory then for yo-yoing.
I've also thought it's interesting where like spin tops, like there's so much branding and imagery that has to do with, not so much, but like if anyone wants to make like their brand somewhat toy themed, like I was in a sauce aisle, like the condiment aisle at the grocery store, and there was some brand with like mustards and all kinds of aiolis and stuff, but it was called like Top Sauce or something. And I was like, that's so interesting. Like there would never be like a yo-yo sauce or something. And then I made like a stories about it, and Steve commented back, and he's like, yeah, because top literally means you're the best. I figured it would be cool to bring in Justin's amazing and lovely wife, Karen Weber. Who I just learned earlier, I guess, are you from Delaware too?
I am too.
I did not know this. Wow. The first time, did we meet before tonight?
We have met before.
Were you at my brother's funeral, I think, maybe?
No, but I did.
I was trying to think about it later. I'm like, what have I met Karen before?
I did hang with your brother while alive in Wilmington, and I wonder if you were there then.
I don't think so. Were you guys together then?
We were at least dating.
Yeah, I would say since like
probably not
2009, 2008, we were a thing.
Yeah, we must have like just become friends or like dating.
Regardless, I've known of you forever.
Okay.
And Justin always talks about you, so you're definitely a character. And I've worn the socks.
And I've worn your socks, your amazing socks.
Gotta show him.
We share drawers, so like everything eventually gets mixed together.
Oh,
we wear each other's clothes, so.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. That's interesting that you moved to New York also from Delaware. But you moved with Justin, or did you guys move independently and then meet up again in New York?
We moved together up to New York. But I did go to Mitchell's as a kid, and I would buy dollhouse stuff. So when you guys were reminiscing, I was like, yeah, I mean, I was there too. We could have crossed paths. It's like we could have met so many times, but we didn't.
That's just how Delaware is.
Yeah.
Like last year, I was dating a girl from Delaware, and every time I'd go out to the bar, I'd run into someone I went to high school with, or like, and that's the worst. Like I hated high school. Like I don't hate everything about Delaware. Like the older you get, the less you hate it, but it's like, it just reminds you so much of how small the place it is, and like all the cool people that live there just all chill together, and it's like, y'all really didn't leave yet? Like, why are you still here? Like, what's going on?
It's true. And I mean, you know, knowing that we had artistic wiring and interests, we kind of knew that we had to make it to some city, kind of any city, but Wilmington wasn't going to cut it as far as opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, we have love for Delaware, and we come back a decent amount, but New York was the best first step, so.
The best first step. That's what I was saying earlier with Justin, where he's like, yeah, I guess I have to move somewhere where there's a good public transit system. So New York is the place to go.
He's
and it's like,
adamant,
what?
So adamant, yeah. That's his like number one requirement.
To me, that's such like a Justin way of looking at things, where it's just like, we'll figure it out when we get there. Like it's fine. Like we'll just move to New York, like one of the more expensive cities in the United States, and we'll just figure it out when we get there. It's fine.
I thought I was gonna be living in like a cockroach-infested dungeon when I moved there, but like my sister had a family friend, and she was like subletting a room in Jersey City, and so that was like our stepping stone into Brooklyn. So it was like
a little bit easier, but still,
and like
it's always a journey up there. But.
That Jersey juke that everyone does, like living in Jersey and then commuting to New York. That's really the move.
Yeah, we earned our stripes.
You know, like moving in with Karen was like, you know, I like didn't have to live in a dungeon anymore. I had a friend.
My wife. So, did you also kind of have a different job other than what you guys currently do when you first moved to New York, or because Justin worked at the Apple store and?
Yeah, I don't know how this worked out, but I got to New York with no job, and I was like, here we go, got to find a job. That's all I'm going to do. And actually, in the matter of 3 weeks, I got a job doing art direction at Astor Wines and Spirits.
Oh, wow.
I had
like at one store?
Yeah, it's kind of a mom and pop, but it's also like the biggest wine and spirits retail store in Manhattan, I believe.
Okay, but there's only one of them?
Yeah.
Okay.
So while it's family owned, it's kind of big or has this reputation because they have floor space to carry like a ton of stuff.
Yeah, which is rare in New York.
Yeah.
You must have killed it in the interview. I mean, I'm sure your skills and everything are also great, but like, just to move to New York and get an art director position off that is pretty amazing.
It's funny because I know, I was in shock at the time, but I had background in graphic design, and then I had done in Delaware a lot of retail styling and anthropology, and then event styling. So when I got to New York and interviewed at a wine and spirit store that also did tasting events, that background kind of added a boost.
Yeah.
So I was grateful for that. But I was interviewing for a graphic design position, and then they offered me art director.
That's awesome.
So that was a shock and very exciting, very hopeful.
Never happens to anyone in like creative industries where it's like, hey, that's one thing you were applying for. Actually, we're just gonna give you a huge raise and promotion off that.
Yeah, that
so
was
awesome.
a crazy moment. So while I had thought I might go and like work in an agency or a design studio, you know, Astor wasn't what I expected, but I think in the end it was what I needed because it was kind of a safe space where there's not like a ton of design pressure. So I had room to grow and try things out and learn how to like style food and wine or, you know, brand events and like learn how to do branding and stuff like that. So it was really the step that I needed. But
how old were you when you got this job?
How old? 25.
Okay, that's what I was gonna guess, and that's like the perfect time to kind of have that, not career change up, but like the elaboration of like you think you're headed in one direction and then you get that job or something else where it's like actually like it's kind of still the same vein but like a little bit more responsibility, and then you're like I didn't know I was really prepared for this, but like it's an interesting position to be in at 25, so that's awesome. And then so you guys work on a lot of stuff together. And I'm assuming that's always been the case, like, or I'm sure Justin's a very collaborative guy. So like, since I'm sure you started dating, it was like very collaborative. And then like, how did you start? Because it's not a very, I think couples in art tend to work together because like you're each other's creative muse, as cheesy as it sounds or whatever. But in so many other fields, people that are like intimately involved never want to like work together. It's like because you spend the most time at work, and then it's like, oh, that's kind of how you get away from your significant other, and then build that time to like go back home with them and enjoy enjoy time with them after you've had space apart. So like. Yeah. Where did you kind of decide, or how did that did that converge? Like, was that something that immediately happened where you're like, oh, like this obviously makes sense, or it eventually was like, oh, it would make sense to work together on this?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and we have so many friends that are in relationships, and they're like, I could never work with my partner, and in total respect, like it doesn't always work, and it's not always the best fit, but since we met in school, we had painting classes together. And so we shared a studio in college with another friend.
Going through art school and the critiques together, I'm sure really helps working together as adults. It's like just brutally mean to each other when you're 19 and then you're older and it's like, oh, I can respect you now.
We like really learned to exist together and like be friends and just do kind of daily life side by side. So it feels very natural. I think in any other context, it would be a different story, but it was almost like this safe, comforting space to be around each other and just start to build that back and forth of like, you know, feedback and collaboration.
Yeah, I also, I was a janitor at the time. That was
your art director girlfriend and you're a janitor.
Well, this was, in college actually.
Oh, okay.
So, still, it was, I found a projector like in the trash. Like I saw a suitcase and I was like, in the dumpster, and the thought
could have been a body, could have been anything.
The thought literally went through my mind, this suitcase in the dumpster, it might be a good suitcase, I might use it. Like that went through my mind, but it ended up being a working projector, which was so worlds better. And so we
something like that away.
Yeah, we ended up using it in our studio, which we called the Prism, and our friend Sammy was part of our studio too. So it was like this little trio, and there was like a rainbow painted over the like arched window, and like we had like sleepover parties in there, just like fun like parties where people would like play music or read poetry out loud or whatever. And so that was kind of the start of our like artistic dreaming and like creating and stuff. So yeah, kind of like, you know, like Drew and Melissa are like doing that. I feel like,
Yeah,
you know,
some of our
bouncing
other
off each
mutual
other.
friends, or Drew, that was the first guest on my podcast.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I think when you start like that, it just, you don't really go to any other, you know, you just learn how to do that together and it works, you keep going. I will say though, when we got to New York, a couple months into being there, you were getting immersed in like circus and seeing how much community and, you know, performance community, yo-yo communities around you, and you got really into the idea of pursuing that full time, basically. So there was a period of a couple years where Justin went like deep into this pursuit of performance as career. And in the meantime, I did my first film project with friends in New York. And so then I started doing film production design. And so we had this season where we were both kind of pursuing different things, so, you know, still like existing and doing life together. But for a while, our careers were kind of going almost in different directions. But then about 2018, we got a design project doing like a kids zine. So Justin illustrates it, I design it. And that really brought us like on the regular back together, collaborating all the time. So you know, I think it will kind of ebb and flow throughout our lives, but yeah, we're comfortable collaborating.
How did that kids zine project come about? Like, was that something that one of you guys got proposed to do, or like, because it's not like you present yourself as a couple artistic duo, so it's like, how do you rope in your partner to this and be like, oh, you'd be a good fit for this? Like,
yeah, it was actually an old mutual friend of ours who reached out to me and said she had a friend that needed a graphic designer. And so it was for a church in Gramercy. And when I met Melina, who was in charge of that, you know, hiring that position, she was like, actually, you know, I have this other project I think I'd rather you do. And I was like, what? And she was like, I want to start a brand, like this kids curriculum and zine. And like, I think you and Justin sound perfect for that. So she kind of like sabotaged that interview, like I think for her husband and what he needed for the church. And she just adopted us to her team. And then we branded her company Storymakers, and we started doing design with her. So
that's so amazing.
It was amazing. I mean, because we were at that point, we were both newly freelancers, and you know, we dove into freelance without savings. We just decided to wing it. We needed it to happen. I know, everything. We did everything backwards. So a job that was regular and fun and collaborative, we were like, yes, 100%.
Yeah, and it's interesting how, I'm trying to think the right way to word this, like, because it's not really luck. Like, obviously you work really hard, like you personally, Karen, but like I feel like you get a lot of good streaks as far as, like, you start with one thing in mind and then it kind of develops or blossoms into another thing. And I think that's so like indicative of life, where people stay on like this one path, or everyone is so focused and they always think like, I have to stay focused on this one thing, and they forget to kind of do other things, or not even just other interests, but like what your career could pertain to, what other things that what else your skills could pertain to, you know what I mean?
No, totally. It's really interesting. I've been thinking about that a lot lately, because I've been realizing, you know, in my journey in New York and years pursuing like design and then film, set design and illustration and fashion and all these different things, I've had almost like an identity crisis, so to speak, where I was like, what am I actually trying to do? Which one can I just pick? But I realized that they all inform each other, and I love them all. And, you know, like yourself with Yo-Yo and art and your podcast and your brand, I mean, you just find that the more you practice, the more everything kind of gets elevated. And, you know, then you kind of hit that like jack of all trades, master of none territory, which I've definitely felt like 1,000 times over. But I realize, like, if you just keep growing in those things, you'll get to the point where, you know, maybe you're like directing a team that builds something that involves all those things.
Right.
So, you know, I think, you know, the 30s and 40s will reveal like better iterations of that.
No, that's
but,
a great point.
You know, I mean, even when I was a kid, you know, you guys were reminiscing about childhood, and I remember having so many phases of style as well. Like it to the extreme, like the punk, the prep, the like want to be hip hop girl, and all these different things. And I always thought it was an identity crisis. But then afterwards, I realized I actually genuinely like something from all these subcultures and like all these art mediums. So, you know, I think I don't want to limit myself yet or right now.
Yeah, it's really interesting how creatives kind of get stuck in this hole sometimes where like you think you can only do one thing, and that comes, I mean, when we were kids, it was so like the identity crisis thing plays so true because it's like that's, I feel like a big thing when you're in high school is what you listen to, so that's what you identify as, and it's now everyone is kind of like a jack of all trades, master of none, where it's like, oh, you're a DJ, this, that, this, and the third, and like you do this other thing. And it's hard as a creative because you find those whatever handful of projects or ways you can actually monetize your creativity, and it's hard to break away from that, or like even scary because it's like this is your security blanket and safety. You know how to hustle and grind in this and like how to monetize this and where you're going to make money from. So like moving to this other space, like even if there is initial money, it's like, cool, this is one project though, like what do I do after this? So it's like like you said, the more that you learn and the more that you add to the quiver of skills that you have and the quiver of projects and experience you have, really, it helps you tie everything together, and you realize like the law of reciprocation is so real, and like everything you learn is going to correlate and connect. So, because now you guys like have your own studio, right? And which is, how long has that been going on for?
Not even a year.
Not a year yet, right?
It happened a couple weeks before COVID, which is insane.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it, you know.
But you guys have sold.
Also, like studio without the studio kind of already started like maybe 2 years ago.
Us working together.
Yeah, right.
Kind of.
But now to have a working space, like that's a huge deal to have anywhere, but to have in New York City and like to have with your wife and like all the things you guys do together, it's just really amazing in a lot of ways. Yeah, no, it's great.
We're still kind of in shock ourselves, like how did this happen? But you know, it was something that we had a vision for a long time, and the right opportunity presented itself, and we had to make a quick decision about it, like everything in New York apartments, and everything goes so quick. So we decided to give it a try, but...
Yeah, it got to the point where we felt like, that even though this is kind of like stepping out in a financial risk, it's like the level of productivity will most likely like make enough money
It'll compensate,
right. So, and it was just something like the studio itself reminded us of that very first studio we shared a little
similar.
bit.
That's so awesome.
And like the woman who showed us the studio was very kind, and like she had looked at our work and thought like this would be the perfect place or the perfect studio. And they have like 50 plus studios to choose from, and we looked at a bunch of other ones, but ended up coming back to the very one that she like recommended.
That's awesome.
So, and she was like going home to like Ohio or something to help her mom and be with her mom. And I was just like, that's the sweetest thing. Like, I don't know, it just felt like...
We met her as she was leaving.
Right. It's such a good omen, like all of it, you know what I mean? And the fact that she actually cares enough to like look into your work and be like, oh, you're not just gonna rent this out and like, whatever, screen print some knockoff Andy Warhol shit and sell it on Etsy. You know what I mean? You're doing something real, like, as anyone can rent a space and get a heat press and make a brand, but it's like, for someone that actually cares that much about their tenants and be like, oh, what are you going to contribute to this work environment and space? It like means a lot about where you are. And like, yeah, I think a lot of creatives too, to harp more on like what you said, like the risk that involves with taking that big of an investment to put in yourself. It reinvigorates you in a way to be, not just to be more hungry to look for work, but like you wake up and have this new thing to go to every day and something to work for, and it's not as cheesy and as weird as it sounds. Like that stuff really matters and exists, and like the law of like speaking things into existence like that, or like having that place and just having a place to go, like you have that in your brain where it's like, oh, now I have to go get projects to put in that place, and like it just all ends up working out when you're in the right place and like where you guys are. So it's really crazy.
It's
it definitely
so true.
was like struggle at some point, you know, because I was doing like virtually full-time performance stuff, but it wasn't really cutting it. And honestly, like there was some like, you know, financial struggle there. And then I realized eventually, like when things weren't really panning out, you know, I thought I might get this like Cirque du Soleil job or something. I auditioned actually like numerous times.
Yeah,
where
a lot
I was
now,
considered multiple times for various roles for them. And I thought, you know, maybe I'll get it now, or maybe I'll get it now. But eventually it was just like, all right, I gotta like do something else for like in the meantime. And so I ended up starting to do more illustration and design freelance stuff. And I think that did help us get back on our feet, because, you know, we had gone on these, like, we did an art residency, we like went to Tokyo twice, I guess, and like, did like these things and got into like credit card debt. And then that one year, I think 2018 to 2019 was like getting out of debt and like trying to like get to a point where we could like build a solid foundation for like something better. And so I had to give up, you know, some time of like that would go to like performance stuff. But by that time, I actually had gotten kind of burnt out by doing all these gigs. And I was like, actually, I don't need that much time in the week to devote to it, because I've like met a bunch of people, kind of made connections. And now work is kind of coming to me a little bit more automatically. And then like now I have time to do the freelance design stuff.
And those bread and butter gigs will always be there that you can rely on, not rely on, but you know what I mean? Like those couple things will always be there, and it's
supplement it. And now I can actually like better like fund the projects that I want to make with Yo-Yo and stuff like that. So what at first seemed like a sacrifice or whatever actually turned out to be like, oh, this is definitely a better idea. And I'm gonna, and like since then I've had like the biggest gig I've been on.
Exactly. And it's still a creative endeavor that is still like, I hate to like harp on the law of reciprocation so much, but like the more creative people I talk to, I just realize like how like crucial it is, and how everyone always like harps on how much you need to like stay working, and like no matter what you do, like you just need to, like your output needs to like just be so much. And it like it's so true. And you know what I mean? We have, like Justin and I have friends, I'm sure you have friends too, Karen, that like that law applies to, or like work even harder than us and still don't catch those breaks. And it's like, you know, it's disheartening, but then it's also like, you know, there's reasons why you guys are where you are, and it's just, it's crazy to see like how important that reciprocation part is, because like you said, like if you didn't continue to work on the illustration, like you wouldn't be where you are now, and like now you have your own studio, and like, but you traded one for the other, but you thought one was a sacrifice, but in reality it was like a blessing in disguise, kind of, where like things ended up better, even though like you might have went into the illustration gig like kind of like, oh, not like you failed the yo-yo thing, but like, oh, I wish this would have worked out better. Like maybe in another year I'll go back to the yo-yo thing, but now you're like, whoa, like this illustration thing is like way more lucrative and takes way less work than performing, and like, you know what I mean?
It's also like a good break from, like, gives my body a rest from performing. And then also I think what we want to do, if it's safe to say, like, is just combine more things. Like now that she's into film more, like I find like, oh, well, like performers are also talent that can be part of film, or like a set design could be part of a yo-yo performance, or like a giant painting could be behind something else, a set installation that she sets up.
So I guess maybe reciprocation isn't like the right word, but just like doing all these things, you know what I mean? It's like it builds momentum and snowballs, and like the more that you add to your quiver, just like you said, all those things are connecting. And I'm sure there's things that when you were 15 and 16, you're like, oh, I have no reason to learn that, or like I'm never gonna learn that. And then now that you're older and you know it, it's like I couldn't imagine not knowing that, or like how did I learn that, or like something that looked impossible when you were 16, then you're 25 and you're like, well, I guess I gotta learn this now. Like it's just crazy how all those things kind of add up. And
yeah, and it seems to come out of like what you enjoy doing too. And Yeah.
there's incentive in, you know what I mean, enjoying what you're working on, because it doesn't feel like work, you know?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
persistence really pays off. And so many creatives I've talked to that are not doing their art as a career anymore, it's because they hit that low point and they just didn't have the energy or the will to keep going. And I think as creatives, we all have to, you know, if we can get used to our fear and our discomfort and be able to sit with it and like keep creating in the space of fear and discomfort, like you'll always get through to the other side.
God, that really rings true, because I forget where I read that quote recently, but they were just talking about like you're the person who has to deal with what you, like when you lay down at night, like you're the one that has to deal with those thoughts. And it's like, I don't know. Like I know a lot of people have given up on those dreams or like not pursued them in the right way. And it's like, you know, they give it up and like they really regret it, or it's like you said, they reach that low point and it's like you really just lose steam and you're not comfortable with where you are. And that's fine. It's not for everyone. And it's, you know, there's like that in every industry. Like there's people who are in medical school that probably feel that same way, where it's like you're $300,000 in debt and you're never going to get out of this or whatever. But so
yeah, those discouraging times definitely come. And I mean, like we said before, we kind of functioned in this like high risk, high reward, right? Like always taking risks, always traveling, like investing in our creative experience. But it got to the point where it caught up to us and we're like, all right, we need to slow down and like actually bring stability to the way we like earn and pay our bills and not live off credit cards and whatever. So it's been a journey, and we've had our spots of discomfort and like processing how to do the creative life, but it's 100% true. If you can keep working through that, you get to a new place no matter what. So
there's like a Confucius quote. I think it's like it doesn't matter how slow you go, but don't stop.
Yeah, it's a great point.
Yeah, and I think we realize that like the human is capable of so many different things, and we're letting ourselves explore a lot of different things, because like, I don't know, like things may take a while to become like a master of something, but it's not impossible. And like, if we're going to be doing it the rest of our lives, like we might as well let ourselves do a whole bunch of different things for the rest of our lives. And by the, you know, later years, we'll be like, you know, even more skilled at what we're doing, or be able to direct better or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's really a long game. Like in our generation with our social media, there's so much pressure to be like overnight success, make something viral, like be something by 27. And it's like, I don't know. When you look back at the old masters, like, you know, like Rousseau and Warhol and like all these painters, and
they were hella old by the time they were popping.
It takes a while.
Hella old,
It takes a while.
Or dead,
Yeah, so I'm getting encouraged by like learning the stories of the people that came a few generations before me, and remembering that like this is the long game. You want like a slow burn art career. You want to do what you love for a long time. So yeah, I think we're just letting it take time and just trying to cover the bases as we go. But, you know, it's definitely discovery. Just gotta keep on.
I mean, it's also like a lot of hard work, but
yeah, that too.
It's like, I think the basis should be you enjoy it and then like be prepared to do all the hard work, you know, whereas like some people might like stop because it's too much hard work and like they once enjoyed it, but now they don't. I don't know.
And that's okay too. Like people do evolve, but if you're the creative with the creative dream, like get through that discomfort.
Yeah, people change. You know what I mean? It's
and also the joy of having so many different things to pursue, and like that's part of like being human. And
it's all about perspective. I guess the more creative people I talk to, I just see so many commonalities in their stories, and like the fact that there is no finish line to life in general. And I feel like the earlier that people realize that, or creatives realize that, like everyone I know that is a creative is totally comfortable working until they're dead. Like no one is like, oh, I can't wait until I'm 70 and I can retire. It's like, no, that's when I'm gonna get that like sweet creative director position wherever, and like I'm clocking that 300K or whatever, you know what I mean? No one's thinking that, but like there's levels to everything, and it's like, I think, like you said, because of social media, so many people see how quickly things evolve, and they don't realize that like just a like or a follow doesn't equate to $1. You know what I mean? Because so many of the people that we know that have this social media prowess or are able to get retention from their followers, like doesn't mean that they can sell a t-shirt, you know, or anything like that, or even know about anything like that.
Yeah.
There's so many, being able to operate in the real world and operate in like a cloud, like, which is literally what Instagram or any of the social media is. It's just like it just exists. Like it's not a real world, you know what I mean? It's a thing that you're pretending. It's a snap. It's because photography is like a frozen moment that you can remember forever, and social media is like a curated version of that. It's like the best versions of that. People used to take photographs to be candid and like capture all the things that you weren't going to see. Yeah, and now that version is like what happens on your story, or like what happens on, you know what I mean? It's not, that's not, social media isn't candid anymore. So, and
Absolutely.
yeah. So I think, creatives just need to remember it's about the journey and not so much. I hated that when I was younger, about people just telling you like you really got to focus more on the dream and not
wiser now.
on the money. And then the older you get, it's like the most successful people you know are the people who are like the most passionate and not like, oh, I need to get this for. It's the reason they're able to make that is because they worked that hard and have gotten to that point of receiving that much clout within whatever world they're in or whatever. So,
and also it seems like overnight success is actually a culmination of like years and years of.
Oh yeah,
it's
like,
just that tipping
practice.
point,
right?
It's like it's only overnight success should not be like the title. It should be like lots of hard work, lots of years, and then suddenly everybody knows you or something like.
Yeah, everyone who is an overnight success loves to talk about that. How like, no, I've actually worked a really long time for this, and everyone's like, yeah, I know, okay, right, but it was literally overnight that everyone knew about you.
Yeah.
But that's. Drew is a perfect example where like he just has this huge catalog of work, and then as soon as someone catches that one thing that really resonates with them, it's like, oh, it's off to the races. And like now he has, you know, a dozen projects a year with major labels, and I think 3 or 4 artists he designed for are nominated for Grammys this year.
Wow.
Yeah, it's fucking incredible. And it's like 4 years ago, he was like, you know, sending me like, oh, does this look cool? Like, what do you think about this? And it's like,
he's always loved that, and he's just always been doing cool stuff, just creating whatever he likes.
Like, you should put a hashtag on this, man. Like, people, that's the way people will see it. Like, I hate this. This is stupid. Okay, I'll put it on there. And then how do you think people saw it? Through this hashtag? Like,
yeah,
and like he probably like got himself the tools that he needed too.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Right, the 3D printer or laser engraver or cutter, because like I feel like.
But he's another example of like someone who's constantly expanding what they're working on. It's never just like the one thing. Even though he's really successful at one thing, it's never like I'm going to focus on this one thing and become PhD level at this. It's like, oh, I'm good enough at it, and then. Like, I feel like every day he's putting out something new where it's just something different. Even if it's like something that's messed up or it's not perfect. It's like, oh, I did something new today. And it's like, not many people can do that or say that. And like,
it's amazing.
When you're a kid, that's like almost annoying because it's like, oh, who wants to do new stuff all the time? But then when you're older, it's like, that's especially when you're a creative and you think about how difficult it is to have that sort of turnover rate of creativity. It's like, it's a job because people normally with creativity, it's like when it strikes or like it's hard to really work it into like, all right, I'm going to sit down and paint. I'm going to sit down and write. I'm going to sit down and be creative. It's like, oh, I need to be inspired by something and then go and do this, or like constantly be doing something else that inspires me so that I'm ready to go and create. But like to be able to have that sort of work ethic every day to just be creating something different,
100%.
the output,
Let alone like when a lot of the money-making creative jobs are working for clients. So it's like you have to be able to put yourself in that mode of creativity, and also it not be for yourself and your emotions not wound up into the product. So it's a challenge, but I mean, Drew's journey is incredible, and I'm so happy to see his success and all his creativity. It's just amazing.
Yeah, well, that Charlie Brown Christmas one he just posted.
I haven't seen that one yet.
But I think Karen's been really good at like she would describe it as like bending her skills to match what people need or want. And that's like a very applied way to get like paid jobs. And so that's been helpful for me just to think about like how can my talents be like bended or melded to like fit someone's like vision. So I think that's creativity in itself, maybe more like a business side of creativity aspect that is really like strength that you have.
Thanks, Jay.
That's super interesting.
I mean, I think we, like, coming from art school, we were very, like, dreamer, head in the clouds, like, we'll see what happens. And then somewhere along the way, I was like, wait a second. We're, like, just going to keep floating if we don't start, like, putting some strategy to this. So it's not like I'm trained officially in any way, but just kind of learning, like, okay, people respond to this, do more of this. Or that's how I kind of got into film. I didn't intend to, but I did a project and styled a table for a film for a friend. And then from there, I got other requests. And so I realized this is something that could lead somewhere.
Right.
And, you know, I think if money wasn't a thing, we'd probably be like fine artists and just doing gallery shows. But that's actually the last thing on our list most of the time. But yeah, I mean, we wanted to have a creative life, like one way or another. So we're totally cool with like commercial art being the stuff that pays the bills, and, you know, continuing to try to expand that margin for the passion projects.
And like when you were in Delaware, you did like events as well that like she tied together like artists and chefs and like the community that she knew. So I think events are also something we're interested in general, and like I'll perform at an event or I don't know, like we'll do random tech stuff for like a friend's wedding or something.
Yeah.
But that all like the practice in the smaller things, it's like don't discount the smaller, like unglorified thing, because that's what I think will always lead to like a bigger and better thing.
Oh yeah,
if you do
always.
like well in
always.
it. Yeah, so.
That's the end. Like all those little jobs or all those little the nothing job. Like if you do one of those well, like you'll be someone's sidekick forever, and then it's so easy to move up from there. Like
the 10,000 hours.
And like the people that we lived with in Jersey City when we were moving to New York, like the husband is an illustrator, and he was saying that like kind of about, I think, calligraphy masters, I think he was speaking about, that like they practice all the time, but if they didn't practice all the time, they wouldn't be ready for that like moment of inspiration to do that moment of inspiration justice. And so they have to be practicing their craft in order to like, you know, you can't just wait around for that moment.
That's
because
such a
when
great
that moment
point,
comes, you won't have
you're not going to be honed.
the skill to like execute that idea. So I'm preaching to myself here.
No, but that's such a great point. Yeah, it just again harps on like continuing, like create. It's so ironic that people call themselves creatives and then fall into that pit of like doing one thing repetitively, and it's again like social media and the internet just homogenizes so many things, because you get that dopamine hit and response from like, oh, I posted this one thing, everyone loves that. All right, I'm gonna do a blue version of that. Oh, everyone loves it even more. All right, let me do it with glitter this time. All right, cool. And it's cool and it makes sense. You know what I mean? From like a regular. Like if you're Nike and you're like, oh, I made an Air Force One, cool, I'm gonna make a blue one, cool, I'm gonna put glitter on it. But like when you're a creative and you're supposed to be creating art, like it's supposed to be different, and like it's so weird in a world where everything's so homogenized to try to create something different constantly and try to make that worthwhile and get paid for it. Like it's such a fierce trio of things, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think if the person loves what they're, were you gonna say something?
Finish your thought.
I think because like if someone loves what they're doing that much, like I get that, but what if that artist or whatever, just what if they start to get emotionally like bored, but they feel the pressure, like they have to keep doing it, and then it's like, yeah, well, like why are you still doing it, you know? I understand if like their craft is just so good that like they shouldn't like do the world an injustice of like not sharing their like talent or whatever, but yeah, I think ultimately, like, we would love to like mix a whole lot of different things together and create more like experiences for people, and that would involve a lot more skills combining, and like a lot more time to create or like practice those crafts to combine them, or
the
communicate them to people who are good at them if we're not, and so on. So.
What are you guys working on for 2021, even though everything's up in the air and we have no idea what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Well, I just applied to grad school.
Okay.
So I'm waiting to hear back
That's
about
awesome.
that. But I may be
In New York,
mixing
or?
school. It would be a program in London.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But it's possible to do a kind of remote and move back and forth situation. So if it comes through, I will be straddling like the learning and the doing. So uncharted territory, but 2020 has made us rethink everything. So I'm like, it feels like it's time.
Yeah, I mean, this whole conversation is kind of, it dwells on like that same, you know what I mean? Like you attain all this knowledge and then like, and it's not just like, what are you going to do with it? But like, of course, it only makes sense to like continue to pass it on and then also like monetize your skills in some other way other than just like freelance work or like so many. It's crazy to read how many of like our favorite artists or creators or directors now are people who like are professors or have masters and all these things. It's like, where the hell did you find the time to do this? And like you said, it's a slow burn though. So like you're 50, 55 and the creative director for whatever fashion house or whatever media conglomerate. And then it's like, oh yeah, but I got my master's in media and communications in '89 from here. And it's like, what? What are you talking about? Like when did you,
Wow.
Totally.
What about you, Justin?
We have that many more years to live, so like, why not do all that stuff?
Creativity keeps you young, so we're just gonna see how long we can keep going.
I think it just puts a rose-colored glass over our eyes so we don't see ourselves getting old as we really are.
Drinking from the fountain of youth.
Do you have 2021 plans, Justin, or is everything kind of up in the air? For me, it's totally up in the air, other than like
that's a good way to
making yo-yos. But
that's awesome.
It's pretty up in the air, especially if I end up like going up in the air to go across the pond. But like I'll be on this like talent show.
Oh, that's right. When did they start promoting that yet, or?
Yeah, so it's called the Go Big Show, and so it's gonna premiere starting
January 7th.
Yeah, so January 7th, and like I'll probably be like episode 5 maybe. It's TBD. But
is it episode by episode, or is it like American Idol or whatever, where you guys compete to the end? Or?
It's like you compete to the end. It's like tournament style. Yeah, so I'm excited about that and see like what comes out of it, if anything, and at least a video to share, and like so that should be fun.
It's funny because like you do those gigs and it's not like immediately afterwards like you're gonna get some amazing gig, but like 6 months down the line, you know what I mean, someone's gonna be like, oh, come do my kid's birthday party for $1,000 or something, and you're like, okay, cool. Like something always random comes out of it. Like that was kind of where another like we talk about creatives and how the law of reciprocation works. Like performance, it's the same way, where it's like, even though sometimes like the things that don't pay the most or don't pay at all, it's like, this is still a really good opportunity and you don't know who's gonna see this, and it sucks to perform for free sometimes, but like also like you never know who's gonna see it. So
it's kind of a wonder that like my biggest gig yet happened during COVID.
That's
like,
so interesting.
Crazy. So that, and then who knows, like if I do get to go to the UK like later in 2021, I'll look up the circus scene and try to find people there, and maybe we'll get to go around Europe more. And I know there's like circus is really big over in Europe, and so just looking forward to that, and like just creating more videos.
Where's the biggest yo-yo hub in Europe?
Czech Republic.
Yeah, Czech Republic probably, but
also there's like a juggling festival in Sweden. I'm like interested.
I wouldn't be surprised if juggling over there was like way bigger than yo. I mean, it's already bigger than yo-yo here, but it's like
Yeah, it is. But yeah, I don't know. It's Other
Skill
than
toy
that,
sub communities are a whole nother podcast to talk about.
Gandini juggling is really cool. Like they do like artistic
What is it?
performances. It's called Gandini
Okay.
juggling. So Aaron Sparks, the yo-yoer,
Yeah.
was part of it at one point, or maybe still works with them sometimes. But they're based out of the UK, I believe, UK or France, UK, I think. And so I don't know. There's just like various performance groups that I look up to, and like I applied for a show in Germany last year. It would be this year if I got accepted.
All right.
So maybe I could reapply to that. We'll see how like.
Yeah, that'd be kind of
COVID
funny
turns
because
out.
like in Europe and a lot of those other places, I bet next year like they could start doing stuff like that again and having public gatherings. And I don't know if we're gonna be doing that here next year, but like
guess a bit
definitely in other places. Yeah.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of a good way to wrap it up. What kind of advice do you guys have for other creatives that want to try to make money? Who want to not just make money, but who want to, I guess, like make a career. Yeah, a career, make a life, like, because I think a lot of people, they are creatively driven and active in high school, middle school, whatever, and then they don't have a lot of good role models, or even now with the internet, it just looks like, it seems really easy on paper to be like, oh, I'll just go be a designer, but no one really knows, like, the steps to do that or whatever. So like, what is, I guess, like, if you could, in a couple sentences, not like a crazy elaboration, but just like, what I guess, like, from what your entire live stories, like, what you take away is the most important parts as far as like where it got you to where you are now.
That's a good question.
That's good.
I don't know.
I mean, I think that, we touched on it before, but like a theme for me has definitely been about the fear and discomfort. And like when you have a dream or a big picture in mind, fear and discomfort will be on your path to that thing. And it's fear and discomfort is not a roadblock that's meant to like make you give up or like it will make you want to give up or second guess yourself or kind of turn to like easier solutions that feel like your dream, but really those blocks are meant to like process through or push through however you need to, however long it takes to keep on your journey to your goal. And I think our generation really needs to know that it's a big picture, it's a long life, let it take time and try to think on your own before you see social media or like Pinterest or whatever. Like try to generate your own stuff from your own brain and your own imagination first, and then see what else is out there. Those kind of things in a nutshell are what keep me feeling like I'm growing and healthy and pursuing my creative goals. And definitely community like this is so encouraging and inspiring, like just touching base with other creatives around and like literally like listening to your podcast, like hearing what people are doing and remembering like we're all struggling with similar things at the same time. So community like keeps you going, I think.
Yeah, community is such a big one.
Yeah.
We talked about that earlier, like Mitchell's and stuff like that, and how crucial that is to like, when you're a kid, you don't even realize like, oh, I'm getting good at this, but then you have a community around you that's kind of pushing you forward in a way that before you even know, like you're getting better at something, and then, adults kind of have a way of puppeting kids like that in a good way, you know what I mean? When it's like in a good way. What about you, Justin?
Totally. Yeah, I think the thing that came to mind is that like joy and happiness should not be the pursuit. Like it should be a byproduct of like what you're trying to do. Lately I've just been thinking like things are difficult,
Yeah, just like Karen was saying.
If I just like try to make every moment like joyful, happy, comfortable, feel good.
It's not realistic,
Yeah, and so I think we get caught up in like needing everything to feel right all the time, but it doesn't have to. And like oftentimes you're going to be uncomfortable and it's going to stretch you and you're going to grow from that, and that might lead you to the next thing because you tried harder or you tried it in a different way or something. And I think if, life is these little like waves of like, it always gets harder. But if you hadn't tried hard in the last step, the step 2 steps ahead is going to be that much harder.
Yeah.
So like, how are you going to get to that if you don't do that thing first?
Yeah.
So
I feel like
whoever like flies all the way over to the mountainside,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, we all,
Maybe
I think,
1%. I feel like.
a very low amount. Yeah, we all, I think throughout the conversation we've had, we touched so much about struggle and like how much that affects us and how positive it is in a way, because it makes you think and it makes you kind of not only think about like what you have that's positive, but like what you're going to do in the future. And it puts you in a mind state where you really want to advance and do bigger and better things. And like, it's all about frame of reference. So like, if you're struggling and then you look at it as a positive thing and like, it's all about how I'm going to come back from this, then like, you're not really struggling. And like, even though you are, like, you're keeping that positive mental attitude about it, and you're going to get over it. But then, yeah, like you said, if you just harp on that and like, that's the only thing you can think about, then you're probably going to take that alternate route. And it's like, I could have gone and got my master's and been a professor, but I guess I'm just going to be like a 3rd grade art teacher now and hate my life forever, which like is more comfortable for the time being. But like, am I sacrificing that so I can have a husband and, a picket fence in Newcastle? Or am I?
Yeah.
Like, we all have friends like that, you know what I mean? And it's like, are they happy, or are they just, do they think they're happy, or do they think that they know what they want? So, like, I think it's amazing you guys found each other.
Some might be, right?
Like, yeah.
It is someone's dream.
People
but
change,
Yeah.
But like, just like you said, it's so important for creatives to have these like goals and targets and like something to do, because it's so easy just to throw up all this in the air, or be like, you see another creative and they are attaining this massive level of success or whatever, and it seems like it's all luck, or they're just the right place, right time, whatever. And they don't realize all the hard work, or like they don't think that it's planning, and it really is. It's not just like you keep creating cool shit and eventually Kanye comes along and he's like, that's dope, and then you get a Nike collab. It's like, no, there's a lot of other steps in between this, and like, there's things that people never thought they would have been doing and evolved to, and now, so totally. That's great. I think a lot of people, and I struggle with it too, just because, when you have that multi-hyphenate kind of title where you're doing so many different things, it's hard to pick and choose like what things to target and what things to strive towards. So like, picking and choosing those things not only helps you, but like helps your progress, and like, well, it's good all around. It's not just for you to like have something to show your parents and be like, look at this thing I did. It's like, it's really, it snowballs, you know what I mean? It all means something. So
yeah, and like, I feel like the struggle can help us relate to like other people and like teach other people who are like, have less experience or something. And so it's like, if we discount the struggle we're going through, we're going to forget how we felt, and we're not going to be able to tell people like, yeah, I struggled to get here, and they're going to have this misconception of like, oh, everything was just easy for them. But no, we had like marital arguments and financial, like, credit card debt and stuff. We had to work through like other things that affected our creative life too. And it's all, life is all connected. And so, but it's, I don't know, it's, I was going somewhere else too, but.
No, I totally get that. Yeah, it's all connected. Like we've said, this whole podcast, law of reciprocation is real. So, do you guys have anything else you want to plug?
I heard a quote recently. I don't know who said it originally, but it was, "The future belongs to the open-minded." So I've been thinking about that lately.
The future belongs to the open-minded.
And I think after a year like this year, we should just keep an open mind and be curious about what could be next. We might surprise ourselves.
Yeah, wow, I've never thought about it that way, but that's an interesting point, because again, ironically, as a creative, I always try to like box things or like put, everyone always tries to assign definitions to things. And it's like the second that you stop doing that, it allows you so much other free brain space to do other things.
Yeah.
Or not think about things within that box. As cheesy and as, unrealistic as that sounds or whatever. But
let yourself be free. 2021.
2021.
Recess.
Joe Biden, 2021. Let yourself be free.
Another thing I was gonna say was that like, we can go through seasons of life or like literal seasons of the year, and certain activities and creativity are like better for some seasons and for others. Like for me, it's performing. I have free space, no charge, outside, like at a park or like in our studio courtyard space where I can practice and like hone my skills. But during the winter, it's like, all right, I'm starting to think like, all right, I'll shift towards like working on my visual art more in the winter time. And then like when I have free time in the spring and the fall and the weather's perfect, like do that. And maybe in the middle of the summer, it's too hot to be outside, do more of the visual art, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like think, how can you do these multiple things and grow them? Like, plants take a while to grow. Someone was saying in my life at some point, and so like, we take a while to grow too. And like,
yeah, that's a great point too. Yeah.
But
awesome.
Excited to see what comes of this and for next year and everything. So
awesome. Do you guys have anything else you want to plug?
I think that's it.
We're gonna create a new website soon with the help of a friend.
Okay.
So.
There we go.
It's Webbers.nyc.
Webbers.nyc. Is that really going to be the URL?
As of now.
It is
That's awesome.
it
is already the URL. That's awesome.
Thanks.
That's so rad.
So I think it'll actually feel like a real like studio then.
Yeah.
And like I just applied for like a DBA for our business.
Oh, wow.
As part of the like yo-yo thing, but
that's awesome. After all this time of doing things, you know what I mean? To have that like official title and things is so, it feels weird because you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's such a journey, and then to be, 30 plus and then like, oh, we finally have a DBA and an LLC and all these things.
Things of the 30s.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I feel it. All right, well.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Thank
awesome.
you.
Yeah, thank you so
And
much
thank
for
you,
having me in your lovely hotel. Justin's staying here performing at Six Flags, so if you want to come see him, or when are you performing until?
Until January 3rd.
Okay, so not that much longer.
Thank you to the hotel for letting us use this room
Yeah.
for free.
Yeah. Hampton Inn.
Yo, fuck this My boys out here getting the bag, paying them hundreds of dollars every night to stay here. Who the fuck else stay in this hotel? All right.
They're like, no, bro.
You guys are being real loud in here. Thank you guys so much for watching. That was episode 7 of The
Thank
Goods.
you.
Make sure you like and subscribe. That was Karen and Justin Weber. Make sure you follow them now at Webbers.nyc, right?
Yeah.
Webbers, like 2?
Yep.
Yeah, like 2.
All right, I'll put it like 2.
1B.
I'll put it in the description. Awesome. Thank you guys so much again.
Thank you.
Peace.